Thank you, everyone. I'm going to call this to order at 6:04. And do we just go around and introduce ourselves first, so everybody knows who everyone is? Start over here.
Sure. My name is Brad Johnson from Starksboro.
And I'm Chris Pearsall from Bristol.
Devin Wendell from Bristol.
Otto Funky from Moncton.
Denise Dalton from Moncton.
Troy Parody from Bristol.
Tom Adams, Starksboro.
Bob Patterson, Lincoln.
Dan Nugent, Starksboro.
Dennis Casey from Starksboro.
Dustin Corrigan, Bristol.
Alden Harwood. I'm the facility director, but I don't live in this district. So.
Michael Kenyon, Bristol.
Matt Brown, Lincoln.
Jessica Irwin's principal of Mary.
Patrick Green, superintendent.
Chris Nezen from Lincoln.
Thank you all very much. Do we have any comments from the public at this time? Visitors' comments? Okay, thank you all for coming. I'm going to turn it over to Alden and Mike, and we're going to take a road trip, and a school trip anyway, and visit the school and
Okay.
see what's what, so
All right.
you.
We kind of have a path. We're going to go down the first floor to the other end of the school. Then we can go up a flight of stairs and go through a block of classrooms to give you an idea of what that...
As far as the spaghetti supper is?
Yeah. It's all gone, Reg. Give you a flavor. We're not going to look in every single nook and cranny. We'll point out some things as we go through. There's a lot of stuff that would be in a renovation plan that you won't see. Code, update on code compliance things that, we can point out, but they really won't. It's more, I think, I see this as the group to get an opportunity to just make your own assessment of what things look like now. We have in the last couple of years had some fairly significant initiatives, especially last summer. So as we go through, I want to point out some of those differences. We start right here in the cafeteria with a new floor and a paint job and new ceiling tiles, which we did last summer throughout the halls, upstairs and downstairs. We have new lighting in the halls, and as we go through, when you look in the classroom and a couple other spaces, you can see the contrast, the difference between the new lights that we did put up and the surface mounted ones that are existing. We can poke into some custodial closets, some of a little bit of the infrastructure. When we come back through upstairs, we'll go into one of the locker rooms upstairs. And then I guess at that point we'll come back down here. So I think we'll start with the kitchen, just take a quick peek in there. The major emphasis in the past with the kitchen was the serving lines and probably a significant investment in new equipment. A lot of the equipment in there is original, and possibly also more walk-in space, more refrigeration space. But other than that, it's still, the kitchen part of it functions pretty well, and it's in pretty good shape. They chose the right materials in there, I think. So we can start and go through. If you have questions, throw them out. I don't know how much time you wanted to allot to this, but
Whatever it takes.
Okay.
Sean's going to film it for us so we can
okay.
put the link out there so those that couldn't make it tonight can see it
Okay.
at home and hopefully answer any questions about what needs to be
Right.
done.
I mean, as far as details of what might be done, I see that as that's what this committee's here for, rather than getting into those.
I have a question, maybe we're going to do this after, but is there an edict from the board as to what we're doing? Because I think there's two questions that came from the last time we went through this process, and one was deferred maintenance, which is one thing, but we don't need a committee like this for deferred maintenance.
Right.
The other thing is, what do we want to do in terms of program and remodel if we're going to do deferred maintenance at the same time? So I don't know if is there an actual charge from the board as to what our task is?
I thought I had forwarded to everyone.
Okay.
That we are charged with whether or not to present or recommend presenting a bond proposal to the superintendent to be presented to the voters of the 5 towns.
And what that is to be determined.
Right.
Okay.
And can you speak a little bit about the makeup of this group? Was that the Did the board direct that? How did people, and is this
So-
your first meeting?
This is the first meeting. We were assembled at the end of February by the Mount Abe School Board. I'm a member of that board, so I'm the chair of this committee. And public notice went out. That's how we got all these wonderful representatives from the towns that wanted to be part of it. We have some faculty members here, our principal and superintendent, and went from there. So 8 of the 9 committee members not associated with the school are voters and from the towns.
Chris, I have the charge in front of me if it's worth
Sure.
taking a minute just to read so we all sort of understand the task before us. The Mount Abe School Board shall form a renovation committee and charge the committee to determine facility needs and shape a potential bond measure to go before the 5 town voters in the 2017-2018 school year. The committee shall research, draft, present, and work with the board or any other ANSU capital improvement committee to implement a facility renovation building plan for Mount Abraham High School, including a timetable for a bond vote and construction. The committee will gather information and community feedback to present a proposed bond project recommendation to the ANSU superintendent, who will in turn use the proposal to inform his recommendation to the Mount Abraham Middle High School Board and or ANESD Board for final approval. The recommendation shall include a timetable for a bond vote and construction. The committee shall submit its plan to the superintendent of schools no later than August 1st, 2017. The committee shall take into consideration all factors necessary to ensure that A, Mount Abraham has the resources to meet its educational goals for students, see ENDS policy. B, the total cost and tax impact of a potential bond is financially viable for the 5 town voters given the current economic climate. C, safety and efficient maintenance of the facility and infrastructure needs meet the state and or ANSU expectations. The committee shall consist of no more than 11 members, comprising of board members and ANESD members, staff, students, and community members. A board member shall be appointed the chair of this committee. Superintendent of schools, Mount Abraham principal, ANSU chief financial officer, and ANSU facilities director shall be ex officio non-voting members of the committee. Members of the committee will be chosen by an application process, et cetera, and was appointed by the Mount Abe board chair. So it's a makeup of the folks sitting around the table now is a combination of voting members as well as non-voting members that are here to sort of provide information that would be useful to the voting members.
Thank you.
Ready?
In addition to looking at things like walls and floors and ceilings and doors, is furniture is a big investment. And you can see here and in the other cafeteria when we did this project last summer, we also bought brand new tables. But as we go through other parts of the building, I don't know, Reg could probably tell you, but I bet you there's still original furniture somewhere here. Yeah. So, you know, just keep in mind the different segments of what a renovation project might be. Some you'll see and some you won't see. The kitchen still functions pretty well, I think. I've talked with Kathy Alexander about her needs, but there's a serving line on both sides, there's a cafeteria on both sides for those of you who aren't aware, and a dish room on both sides, so everything's duplicated there. They've actually taken on, since I've been in this job, a lot more in this kitchen. You know, they're doing 3 meals a day. They're outsourcing. When we had a problem with the kitchen in New Haven, that building was condemned. We brought all the meals from here. They seem to be able to handle that no matter what happens. But storage capacity, there's 2 really not large walk-in freezer and refrigerator over there. I did put new compressors on those and evaporators 4 years ago, so the infrastructure on those is fine, but there's not enough space. The serving line stuff is pretty much all original. Not too much has been upgraded in here except for, you know, portable ovens and things like that, a little bit of refrigeration. A very small office, really not adequate. As they take on more food, I think they really need 3 people in their office, and right now 3 people in there, it's pretty hard to move. And a very small locker room and only just a few other really small storage spaces for all the other dishware and that, some spices. But everywhere you look, storage in every school, it's the same, but storage is always an issue. You know, you don't have enough space.
Then it's worthy pointing out too that they also provide thousands of lunch meals during the summertime as well.
Oh yeah, it's year round. It's, this kitchen closes maybe 1 week, 2 weeks. I think over Christmas they closed, and maybe in between the end of school and the start of the summer stuff. But yeah, it pretty much goes year round. In fact, they have more people from the other schools that come and work here in the summer.
Yep.
So, yep. Yes, sir.
So you mentioned that the storage capacity for the freezer and refrigerator is insufficient?
Is not enough.
Insufficient. How about the rest of the capacity in terms of preparation and staging for the meals that they prepare 3 times a day through the course of the year? Is there sufficient capacity for that?
That seems to work. Yeah,
Okay.
that seems to work. The serving lines are kind of slow, and that would be something that they want to look at, maybe open that up, reconfigure the serving lines. They can get a little bit long at lunchtime. The kids only have, what, 25 minutes?
Middle school
So
gets 20 minutes.
you can stand there for 10, you know, before you get through the line easily.
So that is a capacity issue.
But it's
Serving.
that, the
Yeah.
serving lines are an issue, but as far as
Yeah.
the core and how it functions, as I say, they keep taking on more, and I'm in here a lot, and Kathy and I work together a lot, and they seem to handle it. So I think it's more about having enough staff, you know. So, any other questions about the kitchen? There would be an upgrade to the hood.
I will say that ventilation in this kitchen is just about none here.
Yeah.
You know, that should be upgraded to the upgrade.
When we did the facility study, ventilation was a huge piece of that whole recommendation in the past. I mean, several $1 million in ventilation upgrades are needed, and the kitchen's part of that for sure. So,
I just have a question. I know that it may or may not be part of the kitchen thing, but like the cafeteria on 2 sides,
Yeah.
like logistically from an administrative or supervisory point of view, is there a pro or con to have people eating in 2 spaces?
I think it's helpful, especially for multi-grade lunches, if we wanted to really make sure that middle schoolers had their own lunch space, if we had to run concurrent high school, middle school lunch. There's a lot of benefit to having 2.
They also run 2 different menus. That's a totally
Right.
separate menu
yeah,
from
they
this side.
they
to
run
that
2 different
side.
things. The other thing I'd point out is cafeterias get used for an awful lot more than lunch. Okay, so having 2 spaces and 2 of our bigger meeting spaces is very, as far as Kathy Alexander's concerned, she does not want to change there was a proposal to have a larger cafeteria and move the kitchen that way, which would be very expensive to move and redo all this stuff. That, from the director of food service, she's not interested in that, so. But that's, you know, the committee, that's one of the things you guys will have to possibly consider, or maybe, you know, make a decision early on that that's not a part of the plan. But serving line is the major piece in here. And, you know, the other stuff that we're going to do everywhere, lighting, you know, facelift, cosmetic type of stuff. Anything else?
Who determines what is needed to improve the kitchen?
You do.
Not me.
Well,
I mean, I guess that my question ultimately is, you know, there's a lot of intelligent people here. I'm not claiming to be one of them.
Absolutely.
However, I'm not sure any of them are, you know, going to be able to tell you somebody how to set up a kitchen.
Well, we'll probably bring in the people in the food service business, you know, professional consultants, and of course they're salesmen, so they're going to tell you everything's going to be in place. You know, but at some point you find some level ground.
Absolutely.
I also go out to other schools and look at what they've done. You know, you find out what other projects have done and how it's working. And I don't think that as far as like doing a new serving line, that would be the point where you're having an architect do that work. I
exactly, yep. No,
So at what point there's an architect involved, which I presume, could be either before or after a bond vote. Anything else? We'll keep moving.
Thanks for the interest.
Had the heart monitor on this weekend, last weekend. Still working? Yeah.
Where do you want?
On the right side of the ground.
That's not my call. So as we go down through the halls, a major project last summer was this new flooring, and you'll get a chance to see what the old flooring looks like in a few minutes. All new ceiling tiles, new LED lighting, and occupancy sensors on the lighting system. That was a major emphasis. Bear in mind that all of the existing old tile pretty much in this building is asbestos. So in a project, asbestos remediation would be not only first and foremost, but also a major expenditure. Some schools have put flooring over the old asbestos and regretted it pretty quickly. So it doesn't make sense to take that approach. But it's significant. Last summer, we did just these halls, and the asbestos bill was, I believe, $88,000. So.
Do you have records on the folks you've talked to where they put new walls up over the asbestos?
Right, wherever they put the cafeterias.
Walls?
That's all.
No, but flooring for sure. Yeah.
More than just a
Yeah.
So you've got a list
But
of
if you don't
folks
touch
who've
it,
done that,
you
and
keep
vetted it.
them
Yeah,
safe.
including right in this district.
Okay,
Nothing
good.
wrong with it.
Maybe we could get a hold of that.
Well, call Eric Denuit, Countryside Carpet. I'm sure
Just
he
give us a list.
Sure.
Yeah, that was done before. That's been done years ago. It's like a rubber flooring.
Oh, yes, yeah, everything throughout. Why this thing is here, but let me get it. We're going to go in and just take a real quick peek at the maintenance area, and then we'll continue down the hall. But as you come through, take a look at this mechanical closet. There's a lot of electrical in here, and for some reason, when they built this building, they allowed them to put a mop sink right next to it. And it's pretty scary. So that's an example. There's several of these types of closets in this building that really need to get taken care of. So I can't believe how much stuff gets fixed in this little space here. It's unbelievable. Every time I come here, there's something else that's being fixed. In addition, it's their break room. It's the laundry. We did just invest this year in new laundry equipment after a long time. Yeah. So it's a combination space. I wouldn't say it's inadequate. It's cozy, but again, another space that would be looked at. If you want to take a quick peek, just kind of into that room, a lot of the infrastructure from this building comes into that corner. The main electric, there's a big transformer outside that the school owns, and the sprinkler system water main comes in this corner. Any movement of putting that equipment anywhere else but from where it is right now would again be a very expensive proposition. It doesn't really gain you anything. But it's an area that really should be a more secure area. All of the deliveries to the school come in through that entrance pretty much. Sometimes bigger stuff, we can't even get it in there. We have to take a door out in the hall to get things into the building. So it's a little bit of a bottleneck here. Very little bit of storage for all the parts and pieces in a building this size that you have to maintain. We have the bus barn that we call it as you come in Airport Drive is where we end up keeping a lot of stuff. So as I say, if you want to just kind of circle around, take a peek there if you like, and then we'll go down to the pool.
Everything's filtered through here, basically. So like you said, any delivery comes through there, and then it gets pretty much immediately put on a dolly and moved to the next area with no storage, and then kind of the staging area. Absolutely, yeah.
Better. Seemed to get better.
But in there, I mean, if you go peek in that room in there, there's really not much room for where stuff gets dropped off. I know when I put orders in the fall and stuff, that room gets.
Oh, wait a minute. That disappears in the middle. No. A couple more months and then we've succeeded in getting out there.
Just so people know.
I don't know, we'll take a quick peek, but there isn't much to look at in there, except for people that have never seen it.
That wall where it's all.
Yeah, well, we'll take a quick.
When we leave the pool, we're gonna go.
I'd like to keep moving, but. On this side are a men's and women's bathroom. If you want to take a look, there's not a lot of bathrooms in this building. There's a set here, there's a set upstairs on the other wing, and then there are some individual ones in the new wing, and that's pretty much it outside of the locker rooms. But you know, you could at any point, if you see a bathroom, please poke your head in and get an idea for what they look like. They're all pretty much original too. Go in the pool for a minute. Stay out of the pool. Well, got an audience. I'm going to go over there, and then you don't have to look at the sun. How's that? I'll look at the sun instead.
How do you get up there to replace tiles?
What's that?
How do you get up there to replace tiles?
Well, every 5 years or so, they drain the pool and re-grout it, and I guess you'd have set up staging, or you could get a lift in here. They make some offset, pretty robust offset lifts now, but there's ways to do everything. So, for those of you who don't know, that this is the only high school in the state that has a pool. The pool environment can be a little tricky. You probably don't want to spend too much time in here, but it's a kind of its own animal, and the pool itself has been well kept up. There's no major issues. Things wear out from time to time, pumps and that type of thing. I'm sure there's opportunities for improvement in efficiency. The ventilation system in here definitely needs an upgrade. 2 years ago, I put this pool cover on, and we closed this when the pool's not being used, and that's calculated to pay for itself in 3 or 3.5 years just on the thermal energy savings and also the savings in the water evaporation. When you put this cover out, within less than 10 minutes, you can feel the difference in this room. And so that was the main reason that we did it, for energy savings. But there's certainly there was a lot of problems with what they call efflorescence through the brick walls. If you look at the outside of the building, it's kind of, this whole end is stained white, and this is pretty much due to the improper amount of ventilation in here and heat recovery, and that is actually migrated that way so that offices, and Devin can tell you what it's like upstairs in his office. All this heat and moisture and everything from the pool goes into the building a fair amount. There was a proposal on the table to actually have locker rooms attached to the pool here. There was a design for that. Right now you have to go across the hall or up the hall, if you're a male, to the locker room, which is on the other side of the hall. So that's not ideal either. Any other questions in here? Yes, sir.
Yeah, Alden, how many kids do you suppose take swimming lessons each summer?
I don't know, but from what I've seen, it's a pretty robust.
I think Justin would be able to answer that question.
Okay. It's a pretty robust program. I mean, this pool is used from 5:30 in the morning until 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Everything from scuba diving practice to kayaking to swim lessons. We have a handicap lift. Our handicapped kids are brought in here, some of them I believe on a daily basis, to get to use this for both therapy and just recreation. So it's a valuable asset. There was a discussion in the first renovation round about do we get rid of the pool, and I think we figured out pretty quickly that you didn't need to ask that question. We know the answer. We're not going to get rid of the pool. So
just from a scheduling standpoint, this is by far the most scheduled space in the building, hands down. Like he said, it's 5:30 in the morning to 9 at night, and it's the most requested space in the building on weekends.
And when we didn't have a gym floor for 2.5 months and we said, what are we going to do? We had constant pool parties in here all day long. So nobody complained.
There's a phys ed class in here most of the time, all through the day. One thing that does need to be fixed in here is the stairs. The stairs are a bit of an issue because this lift can only lift about 300 pounds. We do have separate mini strings that weigh more than that. And those stairs, if you watch some of our students try to get in on those stairs, they're a bit of a safety issue. Glass so that the pool cover can fit between, so it's bolted to the wall.
Right.
So.
But if there were another gym, you wouldn't necessarily have classes, PE classes here. We have PE classes here.
We definitely, all through the winter, we have to have a class.
Because there's no other class.
Pitchers and catching start
last week. Everybody this week.
Do we have any assessment of the infrastructure underneath, around, above the pool in terms of 40 or 50 years worth of exposure?
It's pretty much original. The pump has had to be repaired and replaced.
I mean the structure, not even the mechanicals, the structure.
There's
the
no
drainage,
there's no
the
issues.
Steel, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's no
that's gonna
issues that I
deteriorate.
know of. I mean, it's a pretty robust, that was a poured in place concrete form, all right? The grouting's been kept up, so there hasn't been any leakage or seepage through it. The drainage and everything, it has its own drain that goes right out to the cliff. So when they do drain the pool, it's you know, kind of independent of anything else. It doesn't have an effect on the septic system or anything.
Ceiling, roof trusses, all that stuff's good?
I don't know how much they put into it. I've spent some time in the last couple of weeks reviewing the plans because the first thing we did 4 years ago was had a facility analysis.
Okay.
And that's a pretty robust report.
Okay.
All right, and I can provide the committee with that at a you know, next meeting. But yeah, they went through the building inch by inch, and outside of more modern filtering equipment and so forth in the pool, I don't remember there being any other major items recommended there. It's, as far as I know, it's in pretty good shape, possibly new windows, and as I say, the ventilation for sure. So.
Thank you.
So this is the nurse's office. This is not the original nurse's office. Reg can probably tell you better than I can about why the change came about and what that change was, but I believe that in general this works. I haven't talked to Wanda directly about a project since 3 years ago, but there are certain current privacy issues that this does not help address as much as it should. So there would be
There's
some
only
minor.
one bathroom, and when you have multiple students in here, that's a problem.
Right.
The other
yeah,
issue is
yeah.
having a shower for
Yeah.
the special needs.
So it's like I say, there are details, it's not ideal, I don't think it's a huge ticket item, it's more, where do you get more space? That's the challenge the architect has to face is, where do you get more space? How do you take this out and what do you lose? So,
I know one thing Wanda was looking to, a space that we don't really have in the building is a place for, mothers that are nursing, that
Yes.
have to pump.
yeah.
A space where
Yeah.
that can happen.
We kicked that around last year, and as far as I know, the current need has been satisfied, so.
Well, I know of a staff member that uses that back room right there, and it works great.
Yeah.
And they're very happy with it.
Yeah, we basically tried to provide whatever was requested, and I think we worked that one out, but that's certainly an ongoing need for the staff that you have here, so.
Well, and a small thing, I think, but it'll add up over time, is that this door should have a window. We should never have adults like
Yeah.
alone, one-on-one with students, and so there are a number of doors that should be
Yeah.
replaced.
Oh, we would plan on all new doors, and that's a good
But
point.
just looking
As you go
at that
down
perspective.
through and you see, we took on a lot last summer and we painted all the halls and we got all done, and one of my reaction was, oh my God, now look at the doors, because we didn't get to the doors. So, there's worse ones than this, but yeah, doors, we would be doing every door in the place, yeah. Except for the front doors, those are brand new.
One thing I just wanted to point out, just a little about the history, when this used to be where the weight room was, and we had a big universal weight room. It even had a couple cardio machines. I had a big universal machine with like 13 different exercise stations on it. It also had a space for PE storage and where PE teachers had like a common office in. And what the problem was is the health office was upstairs in the original building. So when they had a renovation in like '04, is that about right, Reg?
Yeah.
About '04, they moved the health office to this space, and then the space where the weight room was kind of got put inside the wood shop into a very, very small space. It just sort of dumped the equipment there. It didn't really replace that space that was lost.
And we have students that go off-site to the fitness center
That's how
because
we-
for a lack of one here.
Correct, and it frees up space for us. If we have 3-4 phys ed classes happening simultaneously, we just have the one gym. You can pull the curtain and share the space, which isn't ideal, but you can get 2 classes in there. But then someone's got to use the wrestling room or the pool. Wrestling room has a lot of constraints. It's very small. The wrestling mats are almost always down, so you have to do activities in stocking feet, which is very limiting. And it's small, and just to give, by having a couple classes off-site over at Bristol Fitness, it frees up some space for us. But it's certainly something, moving forward, if we had the space here, it didn't have to pay to use other services, other spaces off-site. It's something to think about. Plus the time and kids walking or transporting themselves to and from.
And you got a bit of an equity issue about who even can do that.
Exactly,
Kids that can pay, kids that can travel, kids that can get there.
Correct. I would
Versus
much prefer
on-site,
to have
everybody can use it.
A quality fitness facility on-site would be much, much better. Yeah.
Excuse me, can we try to keep moving a little bit? Thank you.
So Alden, before we go, I would, could you just do me a favor? I know it was in the
Yeah, can you just touch on that for us, and show everybody on the renovation, because he knows where that's.
Well, we're gonna look at a locker room upstairs when we come around, but currently, we do have one shower in this downstairs locker room off limits. That was done at the time of the gym floor problem, and then it's kind of been on hold because one of the things I don't want to do with a potential renovation at this point is I don't want to do things in the building this year, last year, this year, and next year that are going to get torn out. I don't want to throw good money after bad. The locker rooms need total gutting and redoing, okay? So the shower is really just a small piece of that. The people have gotten used to going upstairs to use the shower. To be honest with you, there aren't that many people that shower. It's a bit of an inconvenience. It's a bit of a safety concern of mine, but that's what we're making work right now until we decide what to do with the locker rooms. We are meeting, Patrick and myself and Jess and Michael are meeting the end of this week to talk about this summer's plans, and one of the items on the list is this shower. So,
Can you speak a little bit as we're walking about the issue with the gym floor? And I heard rumor that the leak never got fixed, that it wasn't found, and so, so can you address that?
No? Well, go ahead, because you're in my way.
Just push hard.
Watch out for Norm. He'll run you right over. Yeah, I don't know if I want to get into that too much, but yes, we never did identify exactly what happened. We found some severe issues with the drainage outside the building, which were corrected. Chris Acker came in and we dug up about 60 feet of pipe and replaced it that was broken every 4 feet and had a huge sag in it. So the theory is that a rain event, we know that the drainage backed up. It's been backing up for years. We also found huge root balls in some of the pipes. So when that drainage backs up from the roof drains, especially over the gym, you've got pressure in those pipes. And if there was any leak at all anywhere under the slab, it could be squirting like a fire hose. So I can't prove that. I have some theories about how this might have played out. We did fix the drainage. When we get the spring rains, I'm going to be keeping a real close eye on what's going on. We did take an extra measure when we put down the new floor to hydro seal over the slab so that even if we didn't find the problem and something happened, we have a guarantee that that floor won't get ruined. All right, and we paid an extra $36,000 in that project to get that hydro seal and get that installer's guarantee that they would honor the floor. Okay? So we'll take a quick peek in the wood shop as you go by. I'm not going to ask everybody to take the elevator because we won't all fit. It's a little undersized. In a project that was an item on the list is obviously the elevator and the handicap access. This building's not in bad shape for ADA access overall, but there are a few places. The band room is one that's not ideally accessible, some of the music area, but as far as we have handicap bathrooms, and most of the doorways and all of that seem to work. And there are several kids in the school here with physical limitations, and we seem to make it work in general.
So is the elevator sufficient in that regard or not?
Sort of. If it meets code.
Okay.
It had a new shaft put in it, I forget the date, I think that was around 04, 05. It does need an upgrade. It doesn't meet ADA Braille and things like that. I have a quote I just got for an upgrade to it of a little over $60,000. I may do that this summer just to get it done with the current funds. It's on my list.
So capacity-wise, it's adequate?
It's adequate. It does not fit a full-size gurney, but when I talked to the rescue squad people, they said, you know what, we don't wait for elevators. We go up the stairs. So it's not wide enough for the new full-size gurneys.
But is it ADA compliant?
Yes, I was told by the elevator inspector that it was. So if we were to do an addition, another second elevator might well be a part of that plan, and that would be a bigger elevator for sure. So then we would have one a little more robust. But to put a bigger one in here would be a structural change to the building. But the upgrades that I have a quote for right now are for a new control system, some new age fall protection on it, the safety type of stuff. These doors will slam you right up against the wall. So that's because they don't have that safety equipment that you're supposed to have there. When it touches you lightly, the door reverses itself. That's all an upgrade that we're not required to do yet, but we're close to needing to do it anyway. So let's take a quick look at the wood shop, and we'll peek in the gym. If they're playing softball in there, we may not want to stand in the way, but.
I don't know which side of the pitching machine you're on.
That's right. In the wood shop, also off to the right, as was mentioned a few minutes ago, is the current weight room, which doesn't have much in it.
This is all asbestos, right?
This is not. You can see the outline of the tiles. This is paint that we painted after we took up the tiles. This and the weight room, and you can understand why, and the metal shop upstairs are such high impact that a lot of the tiles were cracked and missing, and the federal regulations really don't allow that. The minute you have one little loose piece of tile, you're supposed to do something about it. So one of my first projects a couple of years ago when we started funding the building was to remove the asbestos here, in there, and the metal shop upstairs, which we'll take a look at. And even though we need to paint the floor every summer, it's still, you know, a lot better. We did just put rubber matting in this room next door. Thanks to Champlain College, that was donated. And at some point, I'm sure in a renovation, we would, you know, all surfaces are going to get some sort of a new material on them. Whether this might be an epoxy floor, or I don't know. You know,
tile is pretty slippery with sawdust on it.
Right.
This is much
better.
Is there a reason why this needs to stay the wood shop?
Depends on who you ask. Matt, you want to answer that one?
I have my own ideas, but I'd like
not
to see.
Necessarily. I mean, a lot of stuff was moved around before. And actually, there was one of the last proposals was to have the wood shop and the metal shop on the back side of the building, and some other things. So again, that's what the architect is going to have to do. But yeah, there's no absolute reason it has to be in this space.
Okay, so no access, no ventilation, that would be super
not in a major
expensive.
Renovation.
Okay.
Yeah, major I mean, you could come in with a bulldozer and take out all the walls and start over if you wanted to, so.
I think it would make more sense on the back of the building anyway, where materials can be delivered and.
Yeah.
And
You know,
currently
this
the metal
is the
shop's on
delivery
the
for the
second
wood
floor.
shop. There's frequently stuff sitting outside. It's the front of the building. It, you know, cosmetically, it's not ideal. So.
Is the space adequate? Because it used to be.
Well, it used to be 25% bigger.
Yeah.
So it's limited.
This wasn't there.
So this was,
But at the same time, it's not used all day long. I don't know how many classes a day in here on average.
Depends on the semester, but 2 to 3.
2 or 3, right. So it's not utilized for the full day. But it's, you know, when I see people in there, it's usually a pretty good group, so.
Yeah, you know, we tend to get 15 or 16 people in here working at the same time.
And I'll tell you.
It's a lot of people for
You
the
come at the
space.
end of school, there's some pretty cool projects that come out of here. You know, absolutely, there's some nice work, and the kids are learning a pretty good skill set that they could probably walk out the door in June and get a job, you know, locally, so.
I would just add that, so the weight room used to be in that nurse's office and it got moved to here, and Mike Kenyon and Alden did a great job helping us plan out and remove a bunch of the old equipment that was outdated and dangerous. But the fact is that it's still in this space, so when Jeff Stetson or someone is having a wood shop class in here, he's got a lot of people coming right into the classroom, potentially looking to use that space, tracking sawdust into the weight room. It's just, the location of it is not ideal for the space that it's being used. Kids, you know, not great ventilation, sucking in sawdust, all that
These
stuff.
walls were put up after the fact, so this could easily, you know, convert back into a bigger wood shop, and that would give you your 25%, more or less.
If it was bigger, could we increase programming for this and offer the students more classes?
Larger classes maybe. It depends on the scheduling as the number of classes that we can offer.
Right now, we are able to meet student needs based on requests.
Yeah.
Is it ideal, Matt, if you're the instructor over there, the room shaped like an L and the kid's working on the bandsaw over here?
It is not an ideal setup, no.
Seems like an obvious problem.
That felt like a leading question.
I could have said no.
Yeah. Just as a, should,
No.
I mean, line of sight.
With power.
I'd like to see it.
I mean, it might be one thing if.
Yeah. Right, neighbors.
So this is also our multi-purpose athletic training room. So Megan in there is our healthcare professional that takes care of our athletes. It's also shared with all of our boosters, storage and equipment. So it's just kind of another showing of how we share a lot of space around the school here. You know, popcorn machine and a taping table. So.
And stuff barely fits, it looks
like.
Right,
you know, not to mention access and HIPAA and, you know, confidentiality with athletes. A lot of people coming in, hey, I got to grab a bag of hot dogs, popcorn, that kind of thing. So it'd be great to have a little bit more private space.
It would be great to have dedicated concessions area.
That as well, absolutely.
Just as much as the hardball.
The number one is exactly.
There's been a lot of conversation over the years about the front entrance. This is the main lobby, inside and outside. I'm not going to go into the details of that, but there have been several proposals for making changes here in this space. What I can tell you I know is that at 8 o'clock in the morning, this is wall-to-wall people, and also very loud. We've noticed with this new flooring that the sound levels seem to be a lot better in the hallways in general, but this hard surface here, even though that ceiling is supposed to help with some of it, it's pretty hard to have a conversation out here first thing in the morning when everybody's here. But functionally, security has been an issue. For those of you who don't know, last year we adopted a locked campus policy for all the schools in the district. Actually, we did the elementary schools before that. So we now have, we put on the front doors in the lobby and vestibule are all brand new last year. They were pretty rotted out. We have a card access system that works on 8 doors in the building. All you have to do is just wave your badge at it. So all staff have a card to get in. And then there's a button, a microphone, and a camera at this one door that the office sees, and they can decide whether they want to let someone in or not. But anyone who doesn't have access has to get permission to be let into the building. One of the issues that was brought up is that you can't really tell that's the office. People will stand here and go, where's the office? So there's no openings into it. Some structural things could be done there. We're going to go in there just briefly, talk about a few things like the fire alarm system. And Jess is going to tell you how much she loves the space. And but something would probably change here with the office area to make it a lot more efficient than it is right now. Any questions about the lobby area? Okay. Oh, when we come back out, we're going to head that way, but anybody wants to take a peek in the gym, help yourself. The door's open, but they are throwing a lot of balls in there.
That's a serious room.
I can't smoke up there, the teacher's lounge.
Been in here. Spends a lot of time in the principal's office. In trouble a lot.
What I would offer, this is our receptionist area, and this is the person who should really be situated right here with a window, so that people know this is the main office. There's visual contact, students sign in and sign out. We can have students
who never choose to leave without signing out. So it really keeps visual track and safety of students. So it's really common practice to have that window, to have someone who is here to greet people and really keep that safety aspect. I would say things are a bit cramped. There's one little storage space in here that is full of files from the last 50 years that ideally will be cleaned out this summer, but it's really not necessarily adequate for the number of people who are working in here all day, every day. And as we float through, you'll see a lot of the windows have some protection on them. This space doesn't hold heat at all. You'll notice in my office I have a space heater because it gets cold very quickly. So, you know, again, windows, those doors, all those things are going to start to add up incrementally. So as you sweep through, you'll also see a conference room on the side. That's one of our only meeting spaces in the building, and it's really challenging to fit a family that you're working with and a few teachers in there to really have good, productive meetings. So you'll notice that as well. Pardon?
I think you're generous calling it a conference room.
Yes, exactly. Hey, I'm always the optimist, right? That's how it is used. You'll see there is my office, and then there is the high school assistant principal's office, and it would be really great to have another office for our middle school assistant principal so that we can really collaborate and be a team in one space, and that can be really challenging as well. And then we'll loop through the mailroom, which hasn't seen any upgrades in a very long time, and so we're hopeful to really start polishing all of this up to be kind of the welcoming hub of the school.
Good.
I also might notice the ceiling tiles in here that haven't been replaced in the old lighting.
So this is you're beginning to see the original school. The floors, all the 9x9 tile that you see, and you'll see it upstairs in the hall, you'll see it in all the classrooms. That's all the asbestos tile that still needs to come out. All right. Again, we did new ceiling tiles and got rid of, these are the surface mount type of lights that are in every room and pretty much every space, with the exception of what we did in those halls last summer with the upgrade. We went on these fixtures from 96 watts down to 17 watts, I believe it is, on those fixtures. So some energy savings there. Got a pretty nice rebate from Efficiency Vermont on that project, which helped defray the cost. And the biggest thing I think is better light. You know, start noticing what the hall looks like versus what some of these spaces look like. That affects the health and you know, well-being of everybody. So.
You were going to talk about fire alarm?
Oh, I would just point it out. It works fine. What's going to happen here is in a major renovation, when you spend a certain dollar amount of the value of the building, then all code-related items have to be brought up to code. Okay, this fire alarm is not current code. It's not 1969. The original one used to be over that window, which is why it has a box in front of it now. But a whole new system would be required. There would be fully addressable new ADA EVAC devices, the horn strobes, and all of that. The PA system, that would all have to be put together. In addition to that, for fire control, this building would also have to be fully sprinklered. Right now, it is only sprinklered for the wood chip, and that was a requirement they put in when they did that project. But the whole building would have to be, to meet code, would have to be fully sprinklered. There is a 10-inch main that comes in here, and it is town water, so it's basically inside stuff that would have to be done. So those are two of the major compliance issues that would have to have an upgrade.
Those projects were probably previously sized and specified in the previous renovation recommendation 3 years ago?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Obviously would have hit that same threshold. So.
Right. I have a 20-page spreadsheet of all the numbers broken down pretty much room by room and project by project.
We already know what that's going to cost.
We have some rough ideas. Yeah. There'll be an inflation factor for the last 3 years.
The scope won't change. The right. Code hasn't significantly changed.
Well, the fire code changes every 3 years, so you never know. We haven't updated those numbers. What we did do 3 years ago, because a lot of the numbers were scary, to be honest with you, and I mean, everywhere I go, it seems like I get sticker shock, but we had Engelbert Construction do an independent cost study of what they proposed, and the numbers were almost identical. So, I think that kind of validated what the numbers we used 3 years ago. I think this committee's going to have to decide whether you're going to start from scratch or we're going to take that plan and work with it. You know, I think that's one of the things that'll be on our agenda at some point.
What are the current violations on the fire alarm?
There are no violations on the fire alarm.
Just checked if there is violations.
Michael? Michael? Do you know why we got a violation on this, on the inspection? Was that because of the elevator?
The elevator was one of them, and they had to come and replace something that they don't have the part for, and we need to upgrade some of the sensors, the heat sensors.
Okay.
But that's part of renovating.
Yeah, okay. But, yeah, so I stand corrected. There are some current violations. One of the ones I knew of was we put in a new phone system last summer in the building. That's one of the things we did do, and it's now a voice-over internet protocol phone. So basically your phone's a computer. The elevator requires a direct line to 911 and it didn't work on the VoIP. And so when we had the inspection, it took them quite a while. It now works, but it took them quite a while between the elevator guys and the phone guys to figure out how to make that work. And basically they just had to bring in a hard line, go back to the old days and make it work the way it should work off a wire, you know.
The other side of that, which is still part of the internet phone system, was when they call in to check and make sure the panel's functioning, they were getting the fax machine.
Right.
And getting the fax machine. That's been remedied, it's fixed. There's a direct line to that now.
That was
Same
part
as
of the
elevator.
problem,
That's part
was
of the
they were
thing.
trying to duplicate with the fax, and every time there was a fax, it looked like a fire alarm. So that wasn't a good thing. Any other questions about that, or any other compliance stuff? There's a lot of electrical, too, that's not up to code. So that's, as I say, the stuff you won't see.
The new lights that you did install, were those outlets, were there any codes that those had to be brought up to?
No, everything's in conduit above the ceiling. The only thing we had to do for the lights was to pull in one extra wire because of the control system on the lights. But we had no code issues. We did clean up a few things. We found a few old wires that had been left here and there. And there's more of that to be done. That's on your right, you'll see the conference room is really about the only meeting space. One of the assistant principal's office. Still got Christmas lights here. Oh, right, yeah. That's right. We'll do the auditorium. It won't take so long when we just blow through a set of classrooms.
Well, they should, that needs some work, they should see that auditorium for sure.
They seem to be having a rehearsal in there, so I'm not going to go in there and talk much, believe it or not. But why don't you take a quick peek, and then we can talk about it as we go down the hall, if people have questions. There's a fair amount of upgrades proposed in there. The floor of the stage is at the end of its useful life. Needs to be redone. All the stage rigging and curtain and all of that stuff is getting worn out. Some of the electrical, the lighting, the seats. I mean, pretty much this would be a fairly major overhaul. The one thing we did do last summer was we upgraded the ventilation in there. So we've got a much more robust ventilation system than we had previously, and it's driven more by the use of the space. But yeah, if you want to just take a quick look, I don't want to disturb what they're doing in there. Do you know the capacity?
I was just talking to Kathy.
Anybody know how many people we registered? You know how many people we stuffed in there?
Used to know that, but.
Yeah, you forgot all that?
I've been trying to.
I think it's 350 on it.
I was gonna say 400 max, maybe.
So what they do is they also put a bunch of the folding chairs right in between the seats, and I think Matt said that gets them right around 5.
But when you think about it, you got a population here, if everybody in this school wanted to go to one meeting, you're talking 800 plus, right? So you would be packed right full if you had, let's say you had a crisis and you needed to put everybody in there, you'd be tough pressed to do it.
That space in the back in there, between back chairs and front chairs, there used to be all seats in there.
Yeah.
They took them all out for study hall. You know, and that lasted only 1 year, and then they broke all the bolts off and everything else. So we used those other seats for cars over the years. So.
And by end of its life, the floor has already been repaired and needs some significant.
Oh, absolutely.
Regardless of what.
You're talking the stage.
Yeah, the stage floor needs some serious attention.
And the seats all have the fold-down desk, right?
Not all of them. Some they did.
Wanted to point that out. Along with the payphone.
They all had a little payphone.
You'll notice as you walk through the halls, you'll notice that there's pretty much lockers everywhere. Upstairs, downstairs, the entire school is lockers. We spend a lot of time in the summer fixing lockers. Might be something to, consider, would be considered, I'm sure, by an architect to reconfigure that. I'm not sure what current trends are for kids in high school for lockers, but I suspect it might be a little different than what we have to offer.
We had, my high school was built in the late 70s, so it's a little bit newer than this, but we had like an area off the main hallway about this size that had rows, back-to-back lockers down them, so you could probably fit more than you can just putting them along the wall.
When we get to the locker rooms, you'll see that those lockers, they're really beat.
So I know a recurring theme amongst a lot of the students here that I hear is that the high school kids don't have time to go to their locker between classes. So it's a lot of them throw their 4 textbooks in their bag and just walk around the school all day. The middle school uses them daily because they're 6 feet away from the classroom door, but the high school kids.
My backpack weighs 80 pounds.
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's the thing. They feel like they don't have time to go to the lockers, so they don't use them. A lot of them don't even know where the locker
look at new schools and see what they do with that whole thing.
I can tell you that the same thing happens at CVU. There are empty lockers all over that school that kids just refuse to use. And I go by kids all the time, and like your daughter, and I say, "What are you doing carrying 80 pounds?" And they're like, "Oh, I don't feel like going to my locker." So it's sort of a double-edged sword. We could provide them lockers all day, but you need to make them use them.
And 5 minutes of passing time is plenty of time to go to your locker in class. It's longer than most schools.
It's just not high on the priority list of things.
Many other things.
Between classes,
Well, back when we had Shaq carpets.
Like I could lap this
But the
building 6 times in
configuration of
5
the
minutes, you know?
exacerbate the problem. But, you don't have
Right, I'm telling you, it's too long, so if your class finishes there, you're gonna walk all the way down, all the way back, and just.
For anybody that hasn't checked out a bathroom yet, there's another set here in this hall as you go through. I just want to quickly point out, this is another example of code and security problems in the building. This room by rights should be an electrical room. An electrical room says nothing else will be stored in an electrical room, but because we're always looking for a place to put stuff, and because a couple of weeks ago I made him get it out from under the stairs, which is another fire code violation, it ended up in here. In addition, and you'll see here, and in many of the other spaces, if you look on the back wall is a huge amount of switches, which are all off. Those primarily went to the existing, the original building was built with electric heat, which was all removed. So there's all that circuitry and switch gear and everything that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, but I believe it in a renovation it would all have to go. Right, so everything that's abandoned It would be demolition, not as expensive as putting in new, but a lot of old stuff that has to come out, including above all the ceilings. When we redid these ceiling tiles last year, took everything out and then started putting new ones in after we painted the grid, and boy, I'll tell you, these spaces, they're about 3 or 4 feet high and they are stuffed, full of stuff, so.
I have a question. So if you were to get rid of the dead stuff in there, do you get to cut that room in half and then have a storage closet on the back side? Like, is
No,
there...
because there's electrical on every wall. Maybe the outside wall you could do something, but I doubt it. I think it's got to be sacrosanct space for cold. We actually, the phone system's also in here, so now we have this on a special key, and there's only a few of us that have access to this space for security reasons. So, but you can take a look at that. We'll go into the library, talk about some of what's going on there.
Getting tired yet?
Oh, yeah. Doing great. I'm great, Coach.
One of the major topics we had 3 years ago was talking about what they now call a media space, okay? This library is kind of central to this section of the building. If you look around, you'll notice that there's actually classrooms all the way around it. Some of those have been repurposed. Right now, the technology department is in this space over here. And they kind of work out of there. We do have a couple of data closets in the school to get around. The school is pretty much set up for wireless. By the end of this summer, we'll have wireless everywhere in the school. But there's a lot of new ideas about what a media center should be, and books, and I think we just got rid of all the VCR tapes about 2 years ago because nobody checked one out in a decade. So we had freed up a little space for other stuff. There's a lot of computers in here, even though we've kind of gotten away from computer labs per se in the school, because we have carts and we have portable stuff now that you can go pretty much anywhere with it. But there's a lot of use in this space. You never see it empty. I mean, it's used constantly all day long and after school. It seems like a lot of traffic because here, as well as, and I'll point it out in a couple other places in the school, we have a lot of spaces where if you have a class back there, you got to come through the library to get to it. You know, if you have a class here, you might come in from the hall outside, but you're probably going to come in through the library. There is a back staircase that we didn't used to use that goes upstairs. Now they're starting to use that again. I think that's creating even more traffic through the library. It can be sometimes disrupting, but that will be an issue of, does the library stay here? How does it change? There was a proposal to have a cafe in here. There was also a proposal to have a cafe in the front lobby. Just my personal opinion, I don't think either one of those ideas are very viable, but that's just my opinion from a management standpoint. And are they really necessary? You know, we have nice cafeterias, nice big cafeterias, but there's been a trend since I've been here in this district to have more and more food in the classrooms. And from a facility guy's standpoint, it's a nightmare. Blueberries don't come out of this carpet, so, but that's what, part of where we're at, and it would be a consideration, I'm sure, with a media space. Do you have a cafe? When I worked at Middlebury College, and they built their new library, they have a cafe at the library, but it's actually, you have to go out into the main lobby, and it's its own separate kind of little space. And you're not allowed to take that food into the library itself. So there is that opportunity to do something socially or get something to drink, but it's not right in the center of the library.
Well, and I would offer that this space is really starting to drive a vision for a learning commons in the school. So as we move to a proficiency-based system, we're looking for flexible learning spaces where students can get support at any time. So, you know, a literacy center where students can go and get, you know, writing support or reading support in a more flexible environment, so they're not pulled from their general classrooms to do so. And so we're currently looking to start to build that culture now, because it's really going to provide the leverage to move to a proficiency-based system. And so some of these classrooms we're going to move next year to create those flexible learning spaces. And this area is constantly packed. There's really not enough area for students who want the quiet study space to do some self-directed learning and don't necessarily need to be in guided studies, but because we don't have the space, we then create this other need for supervised guided studies when students would much prefer to be in here self-directing their learning and organizing themselves.
I think it's worthy pointing out too that kids are also looking for a place where they don't have to be quiet, but they do have a place to sit down and open up a laptop and discuss a project or something from a class. And it is, for those of you that have been around in the building for a long time, the library always was a quiet space that had very few kids in it. This is probably, next to the lobby out there, the most used space during the day. I mean, there are kids coming and going all the time, you know, both socializing and working, or just curling up in the corners and reading books. But it's really changed over the years.
And you know, if this space were to stay the same, again, it would still have a facelift, and even simple things like going to dimmable LED lighting in here would just, and a paint job would, you know, just make a huge difference in this space.
The other thing I'd add about this space is this is one of the only other spaces outside of the cafeteria that we really host any meetings in, so in the American Studies room and then in the back room over there. Problem being, again, like access, like during the day we don't want to trudge, you know, 15 people through the library to get to a meeting room. Those rooms are also often used randomly throughout the day, so you can't really schedule people in those spaces. So really outside of the cafeterias, these two rooms are our main rooms that we use with groups of more than like 15 people, but they're really not set up to be that type of room. We make them work, but they're, yeah.
And I know Deb, our librarian, would love to talk passionately about maker spaces and really 21st century learning and how she envisions the library as the hub of the school for any type of learning in any direction.
Yeah, some of that, there is in the previous plan, maker spaces. That was primarily at that time designed as a redo for the science wing, and we'll go into the science wing upstairs, but certainly maker spaces can be anywhere. So, okay, let's continue on. Any questions about in here that I didn't answer?
I don't kids think VCR tapes are cool anymore.
What's that?
I don't kids think VCR tapes are cool anymore. I showed one to a gym, they had no idea what it was.
My grandkids like them.
I've got
I have a
Blues off the
DVD,
library.
VCR combination.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You still have everything? Blues Clues, Thomas the Tank Engine?
Funny is, my son owns Jungle Book, and then I rented it on Red Box this weekend, and he has the VCR tape, I was right at the DVD.
Anyone want to volunteer to go find the light switch? Oh, it's on.
Super 8.
Yeah, I got it. Come on in. Hey, Jeff.
This is original tile.
Yeah, oh yeah. There was some work done in here, Reg could tell you more, before my time, but it's pretty much the original. Everybody, you can check out the door on your way out. This is probably one of the worst looking doors in the school. This is one of the spaces that doesn't have ideal ADA access, which has been an issue a little bit, but it would be in the plan. Behind here is a complex of, it's a little bit different layout, it's kind of a labyrinth, but There's some smaller practice rooms, there's some storage space, there is a avenue that gets you to the auditorium, either up behind the stage or at the entrance level in front of the stage. Feel free to walk through there if you want. As I say, it's just some small spaces laid out for purpose. I don't think there was really much proposed to be changed in this section, the music section, except for the ADA access and again, of course, the floor, the asbestos tile and the lighting. We would be doing that kind of stuff everywhere. I don't know, whatever, again, we talk to the music people and say, what do you want in your band room? I'm sure they probably want some acoustical improvements. I have no idea what it's like. I've never been in here when it's full of kids playing instruments. You can hear it pretty well out in the hall. So.
That's an indicator.
You don't really need to come in here. No.
So both instrumental and vocal instruction is done in this room?
They do some vocal stuff in the auditorium.
But just judging by the number of chairs in here, I'm not sure. I can't say because again I haven't talked to this department head. But whether it's a big enough space for the number of kids, that I'm not sure of.
I know some of the course classes are 60 to 70 students.
Right.
Yeah, that's a lot of people for a room this size. And music is, I think everybody knows that the music program here is pretty robust. They have some well-attended, sold-out musicals, and the instrumental part of it and the vocal part of it. I think it's something that the school is proud of for sure. And so it would, again, what happened, for those of you who don't know, is 4 years ago now. There were interviews with all the staff and the department heads and compiled a long list of what people thought was important. And then that was pretty much all incorporated into the proposed conceptual plan that we had at that time. So yeah, as far as backup to all of this, we don't have to find those details again. So there wasn't too much that wasn't looked at. There are a few things that now we're removed from it a little. We see, oh yeah, we need to dig a little deeper into, like for example, the drainage issues. But most stones were turned over and looked at. So.
And it's because of that the board thought a 5-month timeline was reasonable, because we don't have to start from scratch again and look at everything that's...
We spent a year and a half on the first one, so, before we were ready to go for a bond vote. But there will be less work here, I think, before it goes to an architect. There'll be probably a fair amount of work for an architect. So, okay. Any questions in here? Okay. We'll just take a quick walk down through the newer middle school section and back around and then go upstairs. The layout is basically exactly the same upstairs as downstairs, so we'll walk through a block of classrooms up there and you'll get an idea of how the classrooms are laid out. There are some ancillary spaces in a few places. That's just the back door to tech.
Yeah, well, I remember I've been through this before, and one of the things that came up in the building is there's just not much natural light really anywhere you can see from the outside. You can't see windows. Yeah, so one of the things that I didn't realize, because if you weren't in the building in the 70s and 80s, you have no idea, but there's literally, the building is encroached from the original design all over the place, because that used to be a big giant window that would flood this hallway. That is now an office.
Several of the hallways have offices built into them at a time when there were over 1,000 people in this building. So I think with the current enrollment and with projected enrollment, there's probably some opportunities to reverse some of that. I don't think we necessarily need offices at the end of the halls now. One of the things we did find before in a utilization study, was with the programming that the average classroom space was used 60% of the time. So with some reconfiguring, there might be opportunities to remove a little bit of that. So as I say, we'll just, my plan is we'll just go down through the hall. There are down at the end of this hall some single ADA bathrooms, which meet our basic requirements for AD bathrooms and also the upcoming transgender requirements that we're going to have to comply with. And then we'll go, when we get to the other side, we'll go upstairs, walk through a block of classrooms, and then we can start going the other way.
Alden, I just wanted just a clarification on one thing I heard there about the classroom utilization only being at about 60%. I know this because I was on that committee and I also teach here. That was based on enrollment data in Power School. And I think for the people here, it's important to know that not everything that happens in a space is scheduled into Power School.
Right.
Like I saw in the last time around, it looked as if, like the wrestling room, for example, looked like the most underutilized space of the building, which couldn't be further from the truth because it's got a middle school TA in there that isn't scheduled in Power School. It's got phys ed classes every block that aren't scheduled in Power School. So, I mean, I think we need to consider much more than just the Power School data when we're thinking about the utilization.
Yeah, and that was an average, but it did make you look at some spaces that truly were only used 30% of the time. And
well, whoever runs your master schedule has that, right? So whoever schedules the classrooms knows when they're empty, when they're
It also depends on population too. We've had at times up to 7 teachers on carts because they didn't have a classroom, you know, because the student enrollment was up near 1,000, 9 something. So it, you know, goes up and down, but we'd have to plan for that.
You know, I don't know, to be honest with you, when you say we want to plan for 20 years down the road, how you can predict those changes, that's out of my bailiwick, so. But it has to be considered in a building design for sure. And if you look at brand new schools that are being built, they're much different. You know, they're complete, I mean, the traditional classroom is pretty much gone the same way as the payphone. You know, we finally got rid of the one here, but.
Yes, yesterday.
Yeah, right.
You cited 60%. What's a normal kind of figure of merit for utilization for this kind of space for building of this kind of usage?
I don't know as I can answer that accurately, but what I do know is that the addition was built with, at the time, of a projection of 1,000 students, and enrollment was increasing. Okay, so that would be maybe one parameter to say this, if that design was accurate, and I don't know, they never quite got there, but I don't know, Reg, maybe you could shed some light on what it looked like when there were over 900 kids here.
Love that.
Yeah.
It was crowded, but, you know, it was basically more teachers were sharing classrooms all the time, stuff like that, but then the numbers 2 years later just went the other way.
They really declined quickly.
I think we're what, under 700?
Yeah, we'll be, I think, where are we at next year?
650.
Yeah.
I would offer also, I think 60 runs probably an average, you know, I mean, we schedule places that according to student demand, and I would say, I mean, schools might transform in some significant ways, but classroom space is always going to be at the heart of any educational institution. We might have to rethink the way it's used, but asking teachers to share classrooms and shuttle their materials, and it really affects the quality of instruction and their ability to be accessible to students when students need help, that they are in the learning environment to be able to do that. They have everything at the ready. They can collaborate with colleagues, so I think it might depend on how you define utilization.
And I know, I was a student here when that came in, and the guy behind the camera was too, and it made a huge difference for us. I mean, our classes were gigantic. I mean, we had PE classes with 40 kids in them. It was nuts. So those extra classes helped a ton. And I think our current issue is this 8th grade bubble class of about, what is it,
75.
75. So, and then next year coming in is close to double that. So, you know, numbers, big difference. So.
Okay, keep moving.
section air conditioned.
Got a janitor's closet here. Again, now when you cross here, you're into the newer part of the school. That's more what it should be. And
When was the addition made? Within 2006, 2007.
these are our single bathrooms. These are the only single bathrooms in the school, with the exception of the locker rooms. Do have a toilet that's private.
40 people in there with you. Yeah, that's private.
Yeah, they're more private than the ones in the.
No, those are single.
No, I mean the ones in the locker room are more private than the ones.
In this section, there are none of the having to go through a classroom to get to a classroom. That's strictly in the original part of the building. So that is an improvement. This door is open. If you want to take a quick peek in there, it basically looks the same as every other room in this wing. Pretty much just a standard classroom. A lot of technology's been put in. Most of the classrooms have overhead projectors and that type of stuff these days, and wireless internet.
Brought the camera with me, sorry. I've definitely peeked there because that's the difference between a new classroom and...
Yeah, it'd be a good idea to take a look at this. Not that this is where you'd end up exactly. You know, if you were building a new school, I wouldn't want to say what you do different, but things constantly evolve in the educational world for sure. And I think it's, from what I see, especially I work more with that type of stuff in the elementary schools now. I see it's a lot about the furniture. It isn't so much the space, 900 square feet is 900 square feet, but it's what you do with it. So big changes in furniture, especially with the little kids. A lot more collaborative stuff, multi-age stuff going on. So you got to have adaptability and things that are easy to move, things that are safe. So as we walk up through here, and then when we turn left, we'll go up the stairs. There's an entrance on the right, which is the second most used entrance to the school, even though there are 8 entrances around the building that you can get in. This one we call the middle school entrance, so they can kind of come and the younger kids can come just to this part of the building. They do have to go throughout the building for other things, lunch. Everybody has to go to the other end of the building for lunch, athletic activities and that type of thing, but this is still referred to basically as the middle school.
But just to clarify, I mean, all of these classrooms here in the newer part of the building are not middle school classrooms. This is high school students. These are high school classrooms.
Okay. Yeah, I don't
so
get
there's
into
not
programming,
a middle school wing, and you got the middle school right in the middle. High school has to pass through here.
If I'm correct, though, the lockers are all middle school, right? So they sort of, this is where their home rooms are, and this is where they live, is that?
No, down there.
Okay.
These are middle school lockers.
Okay. So, as I said, was saying, this is a major entrance to the school, entrance and exit. And in addition to looking at the building, as a committee, we need to look at the outside and the egress, the way the buses come through, the parking. There's a lot of things to be considered that need improvement in the whole traffic pattern that gets us in and out of this property. So just bear that in mind. If you look out the door, you'll see, I mean, at exit time, this is a direct path to the parking lots, and at the same time you get the buses leaving. It has potential for disaster. So we have had conversations about the traffic pattern from time to time and what we might do differently with that.
These doors, these, other than the main door, can't be accessed during the day with the new
The
security?
building is completely locked after 8:15 or 8:20, something like that.
But until then, they
Yep.
can come in through any door?
Yes, yes, we unlock the doors. All the doors get unlocked at 6 o'clock in the morning, pretty much. We have people come here before 6 o'clock to swim in the pool and do other things, so. And the elementary schools are the same way. We we lock things down at 8:15.
And then in the evening, are all the...
Everything's open right now.
Really, all these out?
Well, we can isolate the hallways, okay? We can lock down internally. But there's enough activity level in this building now that, I mean, until 9, 10 o'clock at night, it's low.
I thought the only way that, only door that people could get was the front and then the back of the pool
Right.
in the evening.
Yes. So, this stairway, I'm not sure, I think when we go down, we may go down a stairway that wasn't done last summer. This is one stairway that we did upgrade with the same flooring and the new covering on the treads and a paint job. If we do go down an old stair, you'll see the difference. The old stairways are just bare concrete, and we tried to clean them, and there's no way to clean that concrete. I tried everything I could think of. Muriatic acid didn't even get it. You know, it's 50 years of ground in. So we're going to go through a series of classrooms, back out in the other hall, give you a flavor for what they look like in the old section compared to what you just saw downstairs. Again, everything is still the old tile. We didn't get to ceiling tiles this summer in the classroom, except for the used ones. We replaced as many as we had. What's that? Yeah, we'll, yeah.
It's just like how they did the PT office and the nurse's office.
This is what all the end.
This is what the halls should look like, what they were originally. Yeah, but I don't know how many, more than half have been blocked off. Trying to think, almost all of them. I think there's only one here and one on the other end, and one over there, yeah, that haven't been converted into office space. It certainly makes a big difference, plus, you know, that's a nice gathering spot that we've lost. There aren't, like Troy was saying about the library, but there aren't a lot of other spaces in this school for small groups. When we go across the mezzanine, you'll see there's some tables and chairs there, and some kids do collect that. But you know, certainly losing 5 or 6 spaces like that is not ideal for the population.
Is it true that what was just the middle school, was built with the roof so that a second story could be put on?
Structurally, yes. Yeah, it's a steel, the entire building, old and new, is a steel frame building. So they designed that with that opportunity in mind. I'm not 100% sure what the thinking was behind it at the time. Tommy might know.
No. I was on the committee.
Oh, okay.
And the reason for that was, if the school ever needed to add on again, why keep going out when you can just go up?
Yeah, it'll look much cheaper.
That is one of the things the architect did try to cut out of it to save some money last time, but we actually said no.
Yeah.
We're not gonna go that route.
Yeah.
We're gonna have it so.
Well, the other part of the conversation was, and will be, a second gym. And the proposal, I won't say it's the most logical place, because I hadn't really thought that through, but the proposal was on this end of the middle school to go out there with a gym. Whether we did, I remember we did talk about doing that second floor and you somehow making that space to become a gym, but I'm not sure that's really what it was originally designed
I
to
think
be.
they ended up realizing that it wouldn't make sense because you needed a regulation court and it just wasn't enough.
Well, that's what I mean, it wasn't designed for that, so, yeah, and, so, okay.
I'll also just say the location of the gym right there just gives me these, like, from an administration standpoint, just access. They have to come to
Getting the thick of it.
get to it.
You want to hang out with us, I know.
It's just so far away.
I haven't seen you once, or how old is this? Where are you riding?
That's just down the hallway, though, really. Not too far. Not too far.
It's not too far, but
Right.
it's not. They're not.
Right. Right. Just go right above. Just do it though.
This whole wing here is what we call the science wing. You know, basically the hard sciences. This is the one and only chemistry lab. Is what it is. It's 1969's vintage. The hoods aren't.
See the chairs?
Yeah, the hood. Yeah, I mean, look at the chairs, the hoods, the benches, the everything in here, the whole infrastructure. A lot of this was part of where they had proposed to just kind of gut this and turn it into maker spaces, bigger maker spaces. For those of you who don't know, are set up as bigger spaces where groups can work and have the technology and you know, everything from maybe some woodworking tools, some metalworking tools, 3D stuff, all that can be put together to actually, you know, do a hands-on, more of a hands-on educational environment. I'm not an expert on that topic, but since this is an example of pretty much all of the rooms in this wing, they don't meet standards as a modern laboratory. There's nothing in here to save. They put in a emergency shower over there. Somebody in their divine wisdom along the way, but never put a drain in the floor. Yeah. So, you know, if you pull that and it does not shut off, it happened once, I believe, in the history of the school. But yeah, little stuff like that that will be corrected as we go through.
Hey Alden, just to clarify with the whole makerspace idea, we do currently have woodworking, metalworking, 3D printers, lasers,
right,
which we'll see later. It just needs to be put in a space that's together, because currently we're upstairs for metal shop, downstairs for wood shop. Doesn't really make a whole lot of sense the way it's set up. So we do have that capability.
Yeah. Also, certainly in a science wing, you have some unique storage requirements. There's a storage closet right behind you here that I'm not going to take you in. It's pretty scary, okay? You know, it's just everything is at the end of its useful life. Needs to be reconfigured, not only for wear and tear, but also for, you know, the uses that it needs to support these days. Hoods that don't operate aren't safe. So I'm not real familiar with the chemistry program here, but I remember chemistry from my high school, and you know, to be honest with you, I don't see that kind of learning going on in here. You know, we actually had glassware and, you know, things bubbling and all that good stuff, and I don't know how much, you know, they're able to do anymore.
I mean, they're certainly able to meet the chemistry standards, and I think Brenda makes do with less, and that,
Right,
I mean,
yeah.
she's
Yeah.
comfortable doing that,
Yeah.
but not necessarily best practice.
Okay. I don't, unless people want to, I don't really see the point of going through all the science rooms. They're pretty much the same size, same setup. There's a biology section. They do have some creepy critters in there. And I don't remember the last time the snake got loose, but.
So, in the same vein of the comment about music, the department heads have described what they need, what they want, what it ought to be like. That's all written, that's all on record.
Yes.
And so that was taken into account again in the previous design.
In 2013, Dora Whittier had several phases to their work. But one of the first one was the actual physical facility analysis. Then they did a utilization study. And then they came up with some concepts. And then at that point, they started meeting with groups and talking with people. We had public information. We had alumni that came and testified, if you will, to things.
I'm specifically talking about the science areas.
Actually,
Principal Barowitz
had an interview, and every teacher, every staff member in this school had an opportunity to give comments.
Principal Barowitz made a comment about best practices. And so what defines that in the context of the space and the facility? Because it would seem to me that not knowing anything about how to design a classroom or how to design a learning space, or even if I was a teacher, I might not know necessarily, what the facility ought to be like. What are the best practices? If I've been doing it for a period of time or have developed certain standards, personal standards, what defines those best practices, especially forward-looking, and not to take away from experience, but that's not always, the experience isn't always where we're going. So I'm a little tiny bit off, but I'm still on the same subject of best practices. How does that integrate with the design and the architecture?
There are a lot of even content-specific professional associations that give guidance about facilities used to best match curriculum, instruction, assessment practices.
Okay.
So there's certainly kind of advice there. There are, what other schools have done to creatively bring lab space to be used more innovatively, as well as used to drive the content. And so there are a number really of ways and research into kind of, this is the hidden curriculum, right? I mean, this allows everything to happen. And so it's really seen as an educational resource.
And that was all taken into account, again, in the previous design. That kind of stuff is what went into the previous design.
Yeah, I would also add that, the first step that we did way back then was to find an architect. And we vetted 13 firms. And one of our requirements was that they had to have a track record in school construction. Okay, so we ended up with an architect that basically, there's several firms around New England that's all they do is schools. They don't do anything else. So I think in the process of working with staff, department heads and administration, there was a lot of give and take where they would offer their expertise, okay, and then maybe in some cases they had to educate the current staff about what they really should have as opposed to what they think they should have.
So the design firms bring some of that expertise.
Yes, absolutely, that was key. Yeah.
We also went to other schools and took a look at what their setup was like, and then pictured, well, what kinds of things would we want to implement here? I remember being at 2 separate meetings, both as a middle school teacher and then in a wider audience in the library, they were seeking input from us, about what kinds of changes to make, and it was really educational. They know their business, and they were well prepared in presenting different scenarios and things for us to look at.
And they spent several months gathering data. I mean, it wasn't just a one-shot deal. They spent an awful lot of time here. One of their principals was here all day long. Day after day after day, setting up interviews and doing their own analysis of things. So, yeah, I think it was pretty well, as I said before, I don't think there were many stones that were left unturned. As far as the final plan and design, well, lots of different opinions on that and what's the best design. I'm sure if you had 3 architects, you'd get 3 totally different concepts, but at some point you gotta, the committee last time finally picked a concept and ran with it, and that was what was proposed for the bond.
Well, and I think, a weakness of the first bond proposal was a lack of total faculty support, right? That was one thing that was cited as a reason for the bond failing. And so I think it's going to be important to get feedback from the current faculty that is here, because we've had a significant amount of turnover in the last 3 years, and really making sure that we incorporate student voice, teacher voice, and really make sure that we kind of still go through the paces with getting feedback about what people really desire.
And programs have changed in the last 3 years.
Right, yeah, and we'll continue to.
Right, and I think that not only has the program changed, but I'm sure the facilities and grounds have changed as well. We're 4 years into the future now, so I'm going to take that into account too.
Okay, let's continue down the hall. Not an a fair amount still to look at. We've got the whole tech section to look at, and then the math and home economics.
I'm loving these chairs.
Yeah. Oh, yeah?
The ideas are going.
Like down in the library?
717. Just far enough out of the way.
Actually tried to explain it to him. This piece of paper was like,
It's in directional. There's 3 Dunkin' Donuts. You drive into Beverly, Dunkin' Donuts. You go to Beverly, Donuts. You go to Salem, Dunkin' Donuts. Right there. It's awesome.
So as you come down the hall here and turn the corner, if you look to your left, you can see pretty directly the contrast between just what the lights and the ceiling tiles did out here versus the light in there. Quite a big difference.
And that used to be a hallway.
Right, and that, again, that would have been a hallway, is now used.
Planning room.
Several people work in there, in what they call the planning room.
Is the playing room for the middle and high school, or just middle school?
7 through 12.
So I'm sorry, this is a hallway? Was a hallway?
So there used to be doors that would go into those classrooms.
I never understood that, and I'm finally understanding it. So this stuff was all converted to classroom space when there was a shortage of classroom space.
Office space mainly.
Mostly
And they
It was
added
converted to office space when there was a shortage of office,
Space.
because there were more staff. More students, more staff, more needs for office space. Fewer staff, fewer students,
But
less
curriculum
need
changes
for...
too, so you need a planning room, which they didn't have.
I'm not arguing against the planning room specifically.
No,
I'm just,
that's-
the whole thing about
that's
why
through the
there's
whole school.
the in-between rooms with no access to the outside. I never understood that until just now. And that can be undone, right?
Yes. Yeah, oh yeah, sure, easily.
Other classrooms were designed to pass through one room to get to the other in the original design of the school.
We're gonna go.
Yeah, they have 2 ways out of
See our
the
ninth grade teams, those classrooms, you can't get to it without going through another class.
Yeah, what's the idea? Why is that? Why was that a good idea whenever?
That's a great question.
It was the 60s.
Well, I think also, a lot of times you want the natural light and you want exit and entrance, and so if you have to do that, you're basically lining the sides of the building. And so it's more efficient. If you put another row, they have to pass through.
I don't understand the second row, that's what I don't
Yeah,
understand.
then it saves a lot of space.
The other thing that happened
It's a
was
footprint.
that a lot of these spaces were built with movable walls, okay? So if you look close, you'll see a lot of walls that are meant to open and make those 2 and 3 classrooms into a bigger space.
Okay.
But
And they're broke down.
they're all worn out,
Yeah.
so we don't move, there aren't many walls that we move here, and the ones we do, we wish we don't have to, because they're, ask
And the
Michael.
ones that are broke down, we got a cost, an estimate to
Oh, crap, that stuff's
either
expensive.
fix it or put a new one up, and you might as well build a wall
Yeah,
out
that
of 2
stuff's
by 6s and sheetrock, because to get one installed, number one, takes like 3 weeks, it takes 3 months to get one, and then to put the trolley system in and have it movable, like one prime example is down here, they open the space and have 2 classrooms, and then they close the space, and, it's not feasible, they're very expensive. I wanna say close to 30,000 for the wall system, take the old one out,
And
they're
again,
very costly.
I don't know what the need is for current programming, everybody seems to have got used to the fact that, yeah, we don't do that anymore, but that was the original design, and I would guess that maybe part of the concept there was that a fair percentage of the time that was going to be a bigger space and not a smaller space?
What I would say, it's, we really have teams that are driving a lot of our work right now, so the 7th, 8th, and 9th grade teams are often in larger spaces. It really, again, is just echoing like flexible learning opportunities of whole group, smaller group, and being able to team teach. And so I would say it would, if you were given the option to teachers, they would opt for more of those movable walls.
Okay. I think when in the redesign, the approach was more to have a variety of spaces than it was to have convertible spaces.
Flexibility. If I could go back about 50 years, I started out at Bristol High School, and we came here, this was a palace.
Oh, yeah.
And this actually is the best kept school in the state, best kept high school. There's no other high school in the state at this age that looks as good as this one does. I've been in many of them. And so I think, you know, I think back to my younger days, and when I came here, and even though in 2017 we might look at things and say this doesn't seem very practical, this school was a tremendous improvement over what we had downtown.
Oh, yeah.
And we used to have to run, we talk about athletics, we had to run from the high school to the rec field over here to play any sports we had. There was no place to play down there. We had to go up to the Mount Street School to have lunch. There was no room to have lunch at the old high school.
I'm certain it's a big upgrade.
You know, so this place, I'm telling you, it's like a palace.
But I'm telling you that now, comparatively to every other school around us.
It's the best maintained school I've been in. I've been in a dozen traveling around with my kids' sports, and hands down, this is the best maintained.
And to its benefit, this building structurally is well built and solid. You know, it's a steel frame structure, it's got a brick veneer, and probably still be here in another 100 years. That part of it doesn't need really much work. I mean, the normal maintenance you'd have to exterior bricks and pointing and cleaning and that type of stuff, but pretty much we don't have any structural issues here. So,
Well, like you're saying, with everything you just discussed, maintenance to that will keep it going another 50, 60, 70 years.
Right.
You know, just maintenance is a huge thing for any school.
I think they did this.
Just removing this floor and putting in a different floor. How much of that just change?
It would make it a little like.
Interesting thing.
Different world.
I wonder if it's not the glare for the windows. This is the strangest thing to me in the entire world.
Well, it didn't used to be up here.
Yeah.
What's funny is,
I used to be downstairs.
from U32 and the latest.
That's what I wasn't paying attention.
So, they quickly did away with it.
Hey, Matt, we might as well from here go right through.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah.
Here for a long time. Yeah. So this is actually where the metal working class classroom. So we don't have enough space to actually have tables to meet at and work at.
How do you get your materials in?
We have to carry them through the building up the stairs or hand them through the window.
Your coolant's turned off, right?
It is, yeah, we're good there. Been checking that quite often. So this classroom, we still have 13 or 14 people in here working at the same time. And it's half the size of the wood shop, so really not adequate space for what we're trying to do. And the materials do need to come somehow up here. The elevator's not big enough to fit any of it. And so it comes up through that window over there, or it comes up the stairs.
So a first floor location would be.
Ideal. It
I
really needs to
can
be
tell
first
you
floor.
that in a renovation, this won't stay here. That's per the fire marshal. All right, fire marshal's not happy that we have this on the second floor over the wood shop, which is probably the most combustible area in the entire school. So this things would have to change between here and downstairs in any plan that we looked at.
So the way our curriculum is set up, we work wood shop, metal shop, locations, as well as our tech rooms. they all work together, so they use all 3 spaces for the different courses. And currently, 2 separate floors and 4 different rooms really isn't a
And
very
we'll
good setup.
go through that right now so you can kind of see the progression of tech. This sort of area is what we call the tech wing. And there's been some major changes in that even in the time I've been here. So, any questions more about the metal shop? Well, Matt, on the bullhorn? No? I'd like to find out the light switches.
Adequate ventilation is another piece of that. No, I know, it's all those. You don't have the light.
Matt, you're welcome to keep talking about what you do up there.
So we have upgraded this space in the last few years. I don't know if anyone remembers what it used to be like, but it's a lot cleaner. This is our project lab where we're doing applied architecture courses. We have a CNC router that we run that runs in a couple different courses. And then next door is the CAD lab, which we've upgraded. It used to be all hand drafting work. So we've gone a lot more tech-based, which is where the industry's gone. So it makes sense to follow industry, try to keep up with types of technology that they're using out in industry. So that's part of our demand in our department, is keeping up with the industry and having that infrastructure available to us. So we can go next door to the CAD lab. So we have upgraded quite a bit, and we have laser engravers, 3D printers. It's all CAD based, so they're doing all computer design with these programs. So there is a change, a lot from when I was here even, so it was all hand drawing, hand drafting. So it's just a need to keep up with the industry and try to maintain what we have and continue to improve and give students experiences that when they get out of high school, it'll apply to jobs that they may have.
These are the most computers I've seen in one space.
This was one of the computer labs that they took out 2 summers ago because they're going to carts. So we said, we'll take those, and we set up this lab, which has been great.
So as far as I know, there's only really 2 computer labs left. Basically the computers left in this room here, and then there's that one in the new wing.
I think so.
That's it, because they moved the one out of the library, so.
There's still quite a few computers in the library.
Yeah, there are some computers in the library.
There's that one whole wall.
Right, yep. There's a lot.
Dedicated workstations.
Right, dedicated workstation, mass testing, like we do concussion testing for athletics, and this is one of the few spaces we can use for that purpose. We don't do it often, but just an observation that the Chrome carts are awesome, but you know, for some standardized test things, you need a mouse compatible with it in a desktop format. So I think we're down to like 2 in the school, which is fine.
And for our purposes, having the computer labs is great, but we'd really like to be obviously on the ground floor with the shop workspaces and have it all nearby so that we can go from this room right next door, because we designed something here and we want to run it on a laser machine next door. We want to run it on a CNC router out of wood or a CNC plasma torch out of metal. Like, to be able to just work back and forth within these programs would be ideal. It's very difficult to take your woodshop class up here to use the laser machine and then go back down to woodshop to continue working. So that's kind of the direction we'd like to head and be able to work together in the classrooms.
In an ideal world too, like with everything close and maybe a glass wall or something, like you could have an open lab,
right?
And kids can work and you can supervise the whole space.
Yeah,
in
that'd be
essence,
nice.
yeah.
Right. We have some conceptual drawings of some of those types of spaces from the last time that we'll bring to a committee meeting.
And I know one piece of it in the last one was The shop spaces were pretty much all but eliminated in that final version, and it was really, really downsized. We do a lot in these spaces, so I'd hate to see it downsized and just put into one little box. We have a lot of people that come in from other classes. The middle school students come up from different courses to use it, so it gets utilized quite a bit. We painted over all of it.
Not all of it.
No, we got 95% of it. That's pretty good.
You missed one.
Yeah. So this is the middle school tech ed space, which serves all the middle school students, and we're working to upgrade this as well to try to be more technology based because that's where everything is going. So the middle school students will hopefully be prepared to move to the high school programs. So we are going to be adding some computer space and making it more like a computer space over there. But this is again a space where 15 to 20 students might have to work in a tech-based program, which is a little bit different, having the room to work than other courses. So having adequate space for this would be ideal as well.
You're the wrong end, boy.
We used to take a guy who would come here, Larry, we'd be working here, and he'd come in and say, hey guys, so throw me off the bank out back. He'd have enough room to have his hand glider there, and we'd all get out there, and ask Reggie, and we'd throw him off, and he'd go hand gliding out. You can't even hardly stand,
Because we don't have another gym. Well, there's no place.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
When he comes back out.
It was $300,000.
Oh, faculty room. A lot of fun in there. You never know what's going to happen.
Wow.
This is the one and only faculty lounge, lunchroom, if you will. You can see it also serves as a copier space. I don't know, what's the total staff population here?
We have about 80 professional staff.
Oh, just total adults in the building that would might want to have
100.
lunch? Yeah, okay, so for 100 people to have lunch in here, it doesn't work that way, and I don't know if that's a problem or not, but you know, it's not, there is a men's and ladies room in here for staff use, so they don't have to use the public bathrooms. But it's the basics, you know, it's nothing fancy as far as a lunchroom, a couple of microwaves and a refrigerator, and I don't believe there was any changes proposed for this, but.
I would say it's not often it's full at lunch.
And a lot of teachers.
Space is adequate, but
kids.
it could be eaten up a little bit.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. It's not like there's people fighting for seats.
Yeah.
Is it because it's just not nice enough for people to want to come and be in here, or
No,
is
it's
it?
because Matt's lunches always smell weird.
Right.
Right, yeah, and that's the thing, a lot of, like, I'm sure like Mr. Nezen isn't trying to sprint up here from the middle school wing to get here. For other people, it's right down the hallway, or, you know, for Matt, it's right around the corner, so it makes
Well,
sense.
and also there's a fair amount of staff that eat in the cafeteria, you know, and eat the lunch there, so it's not like everybody brings a bag lunch and wants to, and you know, you eat in your classroom, you know, I'm sure people do whatever they're comfortable with, so.
It's utilized a lot just as a workspace. I mean,
Right.
most people come here to do their copying and put packets together. And, you know, if you're a teacher that doesn't have an office, if someone else is using your classroom, you need a space to go work.
Right.
Because so.
Right, I mean, you know, there was, been proposed a few times, where do you put like these big copiers and stuff, and, you know, we actually still have one in the hall. So, or we did have, I think maybe it's gone now, but, you know, this is one of those other places where it does get alternate uses because it's not easy to come by these alternate spaces. Really?
Yeah, how the space is used. Right. So the other thing I just wanted to mention, so just in the hallways here, so as far as like athletics go and extracurriculars, these hallways really serve as our only other space during the winter seasons and during the seasons where there's snow on the ground. So when you guys leave tonight, you'll notice that we'll have a softball team in our gym tonight till 9:15 practicing, and that's only with 4 sports starting right now, and that's just high school. So you know, we have some families driving from South Starksboro to pick their kid up at 9:15 back to South Starksboro. You know, it's almost
6 o'clock in the morning.
And 6 o'clock in the morning to make it happen. So our middle school athletes typically get about 30 minutes of gym time, and then they run the halls for 30 minutes to an hour, just sprinting, push-ups, sit-ups up and down the hallways.
We're talking like groups of 30 plus kids at a time. I mean, it's like a stampede.
And not only
like
that,
3 or
from a
4 teams
custodial
at a time.
standpoint, my custodians literally have to wait till 9:30 to actually do their jobs because could be hundreds of kids, literally,
Right. And I
doing
actually,
laps around the upstairs.
I printed off a bunch of copies of the winter gym schedule from November until the beginning of March, and it kind of shows that even while utilizing a practice slot at BES, the hallways in our gym here is in use from 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. and then from 3 to 9 p.m. Monday through Friday for 3.5 months out of the year, and that's with you know, not taking into account Saturdays and all the extra stuff that goes on. So it's busy, it's packed. And
Also add, that's with middle school teams only getting 30 minutes of gym time on half of a gym with a vinyl curtain pulled and another team using
exactly.
it.
And that's the other
There's
thing,
10
right? So for example, like, I think one of our middle school teams this year was over 20 kids practicing on a half a court with 3 hoops for 30 minutes, maybe 3 times a week, which is just kind of tough.
Right.
Tough for the kids.
If you're trying to, I mean, for
What's the
developing
average for a
them-
middle school team?
Ooh, here, so
Any school, I mean, what's the average for them practice-wise?
So here it's a little bit different because we have the one gym and we don't cut at the middle school level. We have, I think this year we had just over 80 students in our middle school basketball program between boys and girls, so approximately anywhere from 15 to 20 kids per team or more. And what that did was it really makes scheduling very difficult in terms of when home games are, when practices are. I think Patrick can probably attest to it. So
I certainly can. It's jam-packed, and you're asking about other schools. I can't speak for a lot of schools, but I know one middle school in Middlebury pretty well, and middle school teams in the winter there practice an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week.
Because they have a middle school gym.
Yes, and so coming from my previous place of employment, we were able to actually host 6 middle school teams. So 3 boys teams and 3 girls teams, each with a dedicated hour and a half practice slot right after school every day, and then they could hop on the late bus and go home. And we also had 0 6 a.m. practices, and most practices ended by 7:30, 8 o'clock. But that's also with the second gym. So.
And you're not even talking about allowing any access at all to anybody else besides your school sports teams.
0.
So it means 0 community, 0 anybody else who's not school having access to the
My
building.
second shift shuts down at 10:30, 11 o'clock. They have like minimal time to clean up after how many teams that go in there? and then come around at 6:30, there's somebody in there, so we can't do it in the morning with
And
my
that-
day shift either.
It posed a really big problem for us this year because we had 6 a.m. practices littered throughout the entire winter, and I'd say, hey Mike, we got a couple ceiling tiles down, or there's a light out, or can you look at this thing on the hoop, and there's really no time between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. at night for any sort of maintenance, which made things really tricky. So.
Urging us to keep going.
Yeah.
Push them through, Norm.
Speaking of 10.
I guess nobody wants to follow him. Go on.
So is this up to code?
What's that?
Is this all right to have kilns on the second floor?
Probably, yeah. I don't believe we've ever had issue with that. It's more that the two things with kilns are maintenance and electrical load, okay? So, big hit on our peak. We try to run it during off-peak times. And those recently have actually changed with Green Mountain Power, so we may have to talk about different scheduling. But kilns in schools are a big contributor to peak electrical loads when they're not properly scheduled. I can't really speak too much. I don't know if Jess, you can, about this part of ceramics, and I think they do some fine metal work out there.
They do. It's pretty tight. It's tight space to be really doing a lot of hands-on art with. The wheel space, students have to rotate through and take turns. It's typical in any school, but I think could certainly be enhanced. Both of the kilns are over their expected lifespan, so
Right,
we're replacing one for next year just to make sure that we're never in a pinch like the gym floor to have students not have access to what they need.
Right.
But I think typically a ceramic space and fine metal working space would be a lot more kind of safely and largely designed to accommodate students.
Are those classes scheduled at the same time? Could it be one space that could host a multiple of art classes?
I don't know. I would
If
have
there's
to, I would
adequate
have to
storage?
think about that. And talk to the teachers and kind of see what might be workable. The master schedule is often hard enough to get everything and really
Right.
meet the highest percentage of student demand. So when we put so much constraints on shared space, it then drives the master schedule, which causes other issues that we don't
Right.
want to cause for students. So.
That's what I was,
And, another typical, the traffic pattern, again, you've got to come through that space to get in here. I don't know if that's a huge problem, but, can be certainly disruptive if a teacher out there was trying to have a lecture or something and the class changed in here. There were a lot of those types of things in the designs that we tried to pretty much get rid of all of that in the new concepts.
Well, this whole hallway goes down this way and it's the math wing. And so for hands-on classes, maybe the traffic is not as big of a deal, but thinking about math instruction and having to have a whole class of students walk through while you're instructing.
We're going to go in there next.
Oh, perfect.
see the table.
Give you a little preview here.
This is the configuration. I was wondering why this ever made a good sense to anybody.
Well,
Heaven forbid one of these kids has to go to the bathroom.
Putting a whole nother layer, and so you don't have to go out. I know.
It has to be the only reason, because there's corner after corner after corner instead of a big long hallway. It had to be something about heating or efficiency or something in the 70s, right? I mean, it really is only have you ever been to Missisquoi? They built that school round with no windows. Yep, they're round, every building is round. And in the interior, it's when they had the no wall phase of schooling. There wasn't a wall inside of it, they were all just portable, movable.
Oh, yeah. Another hall that's had an office put in the end. So originally, it looked the same on both ends of the hall?
Oh, yeah. He'd sit there with his feet up on the desk, boy, and he had that little cigar hanging out.
I told Dustin Levan and Dean was never gonna work at anything.
You wish.
That was the joke. Coveting.
So, a couple of things about these spaces. I'll wait for a few more people to get in here.
This is a math class?
Yeah.
Used to be business admin.
Couple more things about these spaces, very similar to where we just were, but again, you go through this room to get to that room. There are, because fire code requires an egress from, 2 different egresses from every room, there are interconnecting doors. We can go that way out into the hall, we can go this way into home ec. The interesting thing is if you walk down the hall and you come through that door, the only light switch is over here. So if you don't know where you're going, when I first started walking through here after hours, I got lost, and B, lots of times I go through the room, stumbling along, trying to figure out which corner is the white light switch in. So that this is typical of not only here, but the blocks on the other end of the school where there's frequently traffic from one space to the other. So there's a math section here, there's a small home ec. I don't know what the participation in that is.
We do no longer have home economics classes or living arts classes as formally, but it is actually a pretty highly used space still.
What's it used for?
There are a lot of clubs that cook and bake in there. There are food units built into certain classes, so it's used tied to the curriculum more often than I would have expected.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, wasn't sure. So we can quickly walk through here.
Another quick couple things, just because back to sort of like the best practice questions that people are asking, like you don't see these anywhere in a school anymore, ever. Like this is not done. So like this is very, very antiquated seating and work because everything is now teamwork and group work and collaborative and questioning, and you can't do that sitting by yourself at a single desk. Or if they do, they all got to stand up, do this and turn. Like, they're just, you don't see these anywhere at all anymore.
The other thing you'll notice is there's like 5 different versions in here of this furniture, So.
Yeah. And chalkboards. It's always a shock to me that there's chalkboards. You just don't see those ever anywhere anymore.
So they have
dry erase
whiteboard, dry erase boards,
or smart boards,
and projectors. That you can do computer stuff, and you don't see that. Even in the elementary schools,
long gone.
I think kindergarten maybe because kids like colored chalk, but. I'd say that from my point of view, the main reason they're still here is you ever tried to carry one of those things? Man, it takes about 4 guys to move one, so they can stay where they are for a little bit longer. So we'll go out through here. You can just take a quick look at what's in here. Nothing fancy, a bunch of old appliances, and then we'll go down. We'll take a look at the boys' locker room upstairs, and we'll be pretty much, I think, hit.
Can we make sure to show them what you call the wrestling room and the...
As we get out, we're going to get down that hall.
Okay.
All right, we'll do the wrestling room, then we'll do the locker room.
I just want to say one thing about this space, because I used to teach, I had a middle school TA where we met in that room there in the morning, just because it was the only space available. It was Tom Lerman's room at the time, and he had a first block prep, and they needed a place for my 8th grade TA. John Foster had a high school math class here, but it was always, I had my kids very well trained. They would be very quiet. We'd come through, enter, we'd start, but then 20 minutes into the day, John's 20 minutes into his high school math class, there's no way for us to get out of that room and then for them to transition to the next class without coming through a high school class, and it's an interruption any way you do it. So just this design with these sort of landlocked classrooms that you have to go through a classroom to another
fact
classroom.
that the
It's
middle
not ideal.
schooler kids that are 11 years old coming through and being in high school space.
But also just thinking about that 60% utilization thing. So, that might be throughout the day, but there are times in the day where we really do need every single space in this building utilized.
Sure.
We have an advisory program where it's it's we'd like it to be like 8 to 10 kids, right? Or 10-ish kids
8 to 12?
in a TA. And, we're working on putting together a schedule where that's aligned 7 through 12. The kids would be in grade level based TAs, but to have a TA with a homeroom space where they meet with that kind of numbers, requires every staff person in the building having a TA in every space in the building we have to do it. Am I right, Jess? Am I close?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you were
Next year, as we
talking
move to
10,
that, we will use every single space in this building
Right.
available
Right.
for that.
Right.
So I'd just be cautious about reducing the number of classroom meeting spaces that are in this building, because it would really limit our ability to have a TA program like that, I would think.
Can you feel your arms?
I drove 4:15, so.
We were outside waiting at 9 o'clock last night.
Come back. I can't vouch for exactly the number, but it's in the teens. It was big.
Oh, yeah.
Lisa knows what I'm talking about.
I'm lucky that I'm right here.
Oh, same. Oh, yeah. I mean,
I figured Norm would get him with
At least I'm not coming from South Star.
Yeah, exactly.
Could be worse.
But I mean, the last thing I want to do is have those times be a barrier for kids to
Oh, and
be able to
it
participate. And it
definitely
was.
is.
It was.
Yes.
Well, I know, like, when I would come to drop Daisy off, I just ended up staying. I'm at 6, so. They're working.
floor, please, there's some water here, Norm's doing the floors right now, I don't want anybody to slip.
Oh, real good, Norm.
Yeah.
I could have fallen and hurt myself.
Just slip.
Major Island.
Yeah, Mike, go right into wrestling.
No idling. You can't idle.
That better?
Can
you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's an idle-free zone.
Like a wrestling room.
So when you guys come in, if you can just stay off the mats, please.
Say that like a teacher.
Well versed. Guys, please take your shoes off. Please take your shoes off before you step on the mats.
This year, this room was packed for practice.
And when that pool of humidity
I got
comes
yelled
out,
for walking on these mats one day with my shoes on.
First Vermont state champion in 40 years.
It's like, how was I supposed to know you don't do that?
Very successful.
what's up?
Oh, I just wondered why these are still down.
The youth wrestlers are still using them.
So this is a space that gets used for, we call it the wrestling room, but it gets used for an awful lot of stuff, and I think you'll probably talk more about that.
Yeah, well, if you didn't know, I'm the teacher leader for physical education and health here at Mount Abe. This space, the way we have it now is we generally treat the upstairs locker rooms as that's primarily where the middle school students change. So the middle school classes meet up here, and when they come to us, we're talking, it's over 30 kids coming, so, the locker room spaces are small, but the room itself will often, I've got middle school using the gym a lot more this year than they ever have before. Before this year, I looked at it, and if you worked it out throughout the year, it was about 1 out of every 6 classes we were able to have a middle school class happening in the gym rather than here or at the pool. So middle school PE is in here a lot, and when the group meets, you've got, it's usually 2 classes coming the same block, which totals mid-30s, 30, 32 kids. And when we meet and have them meet against this wall, I mean, shoulder to shoulder, they don't fit against the wall. They're spilling out over into the doorways and stuff. And we're very limited with what we can do in the space. The wrestling mats are down from about November till April 7th is the soonest I can get them to pick them up at the moment. So we also have to do phys ed class in stocking feet, which I don't know of other phys ed programs that have to do phys ed barefoot. But that's what we have in here if we can't get outside or use the pool or get into the gym with the units we do. So we design what we do around that. We make it work as best we can. The room itself, I mean, it's obviously not big enough. You're welcome to come watch a class when we have it in here and you can see how crowded it is. It's also very, very hot. There's no window. The ventilation is very poor. The pool is right there, so you've got that rising heat issue. There is no water fountain in this room or in the locker rooms or in this hall outside, which is an issue where we're working hard, moving, thinking, growing, and we would like them to have water. We ask them to bring a water bottle, but kids don't always, so it's
Then you got 30 water bottles on the floor.
So they have to go all the way down to where we were in those math rooms, down the end of the hall and around the corner, to get a drink of water if they don't have a bottle.
And that's problematic because, we can't see them from here to there and trying to have class in here. So a water fountain would be greatly appreciated. The room itself needs a ton of repairs. If you look at the ceiling, a lot of the tiles are still the old tile. A lot of the lens covers have been broken over the years and haven't been replaced. There's some that, those are fluorescent lights with no cover over. If something were to hit that, it would shatter all over the place, make a huge mess. Some of them, the bulbs have just been taken out and aren't working. Over on that side, you can see there's lights that just aren't working at all. If you're leaning against this wall, there's spots you feel are kind of soft. The wall is actually broken behind that. There's just this 1/8" plastic stuff covering holes in the wall. The wall between those two double closet doors and the small storage closet door, that about 10-foot section of wall. Basically, that wall is not anchored to the floor. It's knocked off. If you give it a good push, it will actually move. So you just go inside the closet and push it back. The locks on the doors are an issue. There's no key. Well, they just need replacement, the doors and the locks, all those systems.
Being really kind, like thinking that you would want to replace any doors.
And it is
the
because
finishes on
of,
the walls need work. I mean, kids try to climb on that, and that, if you pull that, that's coming off the wall.
So we're not calling this a gym.
We have to use
it like a gym.
But this was clearly a classroom.
No.
Right? What's
No.
that archway? What is there? Wall there? Looked like there was a wall or something.
I think
Divider.
at one
I think there
point
was
there may have been a
one of those
divider.
flexible things,
Yeah.
walls.
This was designed to be a
multi-use space. I would think.
1969, I played crap soccer in here.
really.
I can't imagine. I mean, Dustin and I have had a conversation. You play dodgeball, you kick a ball, it's gonna hit the lights, it's gonna hit the ceiling, it's gonna break stuff.
I mean, the
Because
way
of
it's
the whole
used and the
ceiling.
crowding, this space takes a beating. And it's not like we've never put in a light lens. This is probably just in the last month.
Nothing about this thing, Jim. Not one.
So
Right, and that's the old tiles.
the other thing that becomes a huge issue in here is again during the winter season. So I have one space. So typically I'll put our visiting team, whoever is coming on a night, in this locker room, the middle school girls locker room, and I'll give our officials that locker room. However, our wrestlers practice until 6:30, 5:30, 6:30 every night, and then the youth wrestlers come in to use this space because there's nowhere else in the 5 towns with a wrestling mat down. So I always have to tell that first group of officials, hey guys, here's a few padlocks. You're going to get walked in on by 5th and 6th grade boys all night. Sorry. And that's just, there's nowhere else to put our officials. The teams use the locker rooms downstairs. We can't lock the locker rooms downstairs because of the pool, because that's, again, in use until 9 o'clock at night. There's always a constant stream of people coming across, taking showers. So it just feels tough, saying, hey, here's your private space, but it's not very private for you.
When you host a wrestling meet, are these mats brought down to the gym?
Yep, so when we host a wrestling meet, we'll roll these up. There's an extra set of mats in a back giant storage chasm off the back of the school. And we'll put in 2 mats this year. We did a 3-mat tournament, right? A 3-mat tournament. We borrowed another mat, so we laid out 3 mats in the middle of the gym, all the bleachers out. But yeah, this one does get moved, and it is a process to move these things downstairs, get them through all the doors, and get them safely down the stairs without tearing them. So.
One last thing I'd point out about the mats is we've actually, they have to cut, these mats are cut so that they'll fit in the room. They're not the full size of what a wrestling mat should be. And if we were in other states, there's some, associations require a setback off the mat where you can't have a wall or a table. Our mats literally go right to the wall, so I think you have a safety issue there, just because it's just not enough square footage to have that setback.
Are those tables in here all the time?
Yep.
Yes, we need those. What we do, when the middle school kids come in, we have them take their shoes off. The shoes go under the table. They have a log in PE class, so we need that table space for their log to go on.
So to be really clear,
Yeah.
our 7th and 8th grade students for X number of years are allowed to play on this purple square.
Sometimes the bubble square is not there.
Well, they can't step off it and on because they're going to trip off it in their bare
Right.
feet. They can't go near the tables. They can't run into the walls.
Very limited for space, yes.
Yeah.
It is a safety issue when you're in your socks and you come running off the mat.
So outside of the
So I
wrestling
gotta
season, these are
design
rolled up and they're just running on the tile.
Which brings its own.
And just for, my warm-up procedures, a lot of stuff, I'd like to vary it up and have kids moving in different pathways, but a lot of stuff, I've designed it so that they're moving, across the room in almost straight lines. And I might have them sort of paired up in groups of 3, so I've got 11 lines of 3 kids this way, and one at a time a kid is running to that wall and back, and then the next kid goes, that kind of thing. Like I might have a warm-up exercise where while one's jogging there and back, the other 2 are doing push-ups, and then that kid gets back, that kid goes, and then that kid goes. So it's like a 2-to-1 high-intensity exercise and an active rest interval. Switch up the exercises, but it's always got to be in a straight pathway because it's not a big enough space to move in any other pathway and not have collisions.
It's all based on your space.
I have to design everything around the
You are
space, yes.
you are underpaid, whatever it is, to work in this space with that number of kids with those constraints.
You gotta be creative to work in this
Also,
box,
I would
yes.
just add to Dustin, and we've talked about storage, but basically all of Dustin's and I's interior in the building storage is back behind that wall, so from like there to there, probably 5 feet deep maybe. But that's for every uniform, for every kid in our program, all of our helmets, all of our balls, all of our scorers tables in there right now. So
We'll go into the boys' locker room next door and give you an example. We're not going to go in all the locker rooms, but they're all pretty much in the same condition. They don't have the exact same configuration, but they need a complete renovation. They're split up into showers, main lockers, and then there's team rooms off of those. So there's 2 locker rooms on this level and 2 locker rooms directly below, which do have direct access to the gym. The lower locker rooms do. And then, I wasn't sure if the lights were on. So
Half again as many people as are standing right here. Having PE classes.
you should have seen day 1 of wrestling. I was like, is this real?
Name
Is this real?
It says wrestling room. This is middle school phys ed.
This is middle school phys ed.
It's used more for that than wrestling.
That's what I heard. This is middle school phys ed.
So these lockers are utilized or no?
Dustin,
These are the PE lockers.
Dustin, you might want to also mention a quick plug on this with Sean.
Yeah, guys, this is where the middle school students would have their phys ed lockers. An issue I'm having right now is, these dials on the locks are the original. And I've been keeping a spreadsheet of which of these work, which don't, what's assigned to who. And, I've had a couple students move. I actually don't have enough for the number of kids that are in middle school currently to assign them each a locker. And we've got a class of 75 going up to 9th and a class of 125 coming in. Not going to be able to give everybody a locker. And that includes, if you're 7th or 8th grader, this whole top row of lockers is really unusable because to open it, you need to be able to see this top number. I can do that, but it's a rare 7th or 8th grader that's tall enough for this to work for them. So I don't know what I'm going to do about assigning lockers next
It's going to be
year.
a height requirement, obviously.
No, but also, even using these, there's not enough of them that still work is the issue.
Partner them up.
Yeah.
the other style I like. It's these ones.
It's a small locker to share.
Yeah.
gotta be 300 of them.
By the dozen, you know.
But if not, if,
The whole point is that you're using them in.
I got this. That's my lifesaver. Okay. As we go through, we'll go into the locker room. You can also see the stairs, and you can see what the stairs that we didn't do last summer looked like.
Please don't let that happen.
Yeah,
There is.
I remember what that is.
This will be our last stop. Then we can go back to the cafeteria, whatever, but I will just tell you that in addition to what you see, when we did demolish the shower in the girls' downstairs, which was a part of when our searching for the problem with the gym floor, we found that pretty much all the wall studs, it's metal studs in this building, they were all totally rusted off. You can lean against the wall, and you can probably even do it here in some of these showers, and that wall will move right back and forth, just like Dustin was saying in some of the other structures. But in the showers, the only way in the rest of the locker room here, these would have to be a gut renovation. Stuart Whittier had budgeted almost $500,000 per locker room, which I thought was kind of high, but...
So you did one?
Well, we haven't done it yet, but I got one quote just to retile a shower, and that didn't even include the floor, and it was $15,000, and I thought, well, that's kind of high, so I went and got another quote, and it was $15,000, so I guess that's what they cost. But, you know, to do everything, these doors go back out in the wrestling room that we were just in, but to do everything in a locker room and do it right, including the ventilation and all of that, yeah, I'm sure you're going to hit, you know, those high numbers. So.
Dustin, you said like 30 kids at a time are going to change in here?
Well, half of those would be girls, half of those would be boys, but there could easily, I mean, it's seldom perfectly balanced boys and girls, so you could have 20 plus trying to change the space altogether. Do they use the shower? When we're swimming, they always shower, and we're swimming a lot.
The wrestling team is mandatory.
What's that?
The wrestling team is mandatory. Yeah, they are.
The wrestling team always showers too.
And so that's like, so again, that goes back to my point about when the officials are coming in. The wrestling team's practice is ending when those officials are coming in. So, you know, there's always that level of uncomfortableness, not to mention on nights where we get a male official and a female official, they just have to figure it out, and that's tough.
I mean, you can see how small the space is, but also one problem I have is, you know, this door here, there's no blind wall or anything, so I can't allow kids to use this door to get in and out, because, you know, when this door swings open, everybody in the room is full view of the changing area, which is a problem. So this door, I mean, it's got to stay shut unless there's a fire in front of that door.
So when you're doing your swim units, they don't change and go up and down the stairs?
Well, they're downstairs.
I make them walk a lap first, so the stairwell doesn't turn into a slip and slide.
But they come here?
Yes.
And go down to the pool?
Yes.
Back up.
There's no showers in the downstairs girls' locker room. They have to. They got to use upstairs.
Yeah.
And if we want to keep, you know, if the changing times, you know, the hall passing times are sometimes very close, sometimes even the same, but, you know, you have to add some changing time at the start and end of the phys ed class onto that hall passing time, so you get that overlap. We want to, as much as possible, keep middle school and high school kids not in the same locker room at the same time. And the best way, really the only way, is to keep this for middle school, downstairs for high school. I do allow them in certain blocks where because it really is just, it's a huge problem. There's just not enough space. If a kid wants a little bit of privacy, you know, I do let kids go downstairs as well if there's not high schoolers in there at that time, but it's really a matter of what block you happen to come to phys ed, and if there's going to be high schoolers down there or not. In some blocks it works out, it depends on the schedule, but
I guess that was more about a trail of wet people and running
most
downstairs
times,
as kids
yeah,
just pushing and shoving and
it
falling.
wasn't a great design to, I mean, most places where there's pools, usually the locker room goes right into the pool area. You don't have to go down a stairwell and across the hall to get to the pool. It's a lot of tracking waters. I mean, and there's these two very heavy doors that you've got to come through to get there as well. So kids are stopping in front of the door to open it. They drip right there, and it's slippery. So I mean, I very rarely have injuries in phys ed class. But I mean, the kind of injuries I have are like a broken toe because someone was coming into the locker room this way, and somebody was leaving this way, and the door opened, and they're barefoot, and the door crushed their toe. Broken toes is the most common injury, because we're barefoot in there, and we're barefoot coming up here with wet feet, and coming through doors, and they're all in a rush because the space is constrained, and they're all fighting over the back, therefore it's only one toilet.
Probably scrapes toes also, right? That's, you know, from the door, clipping the top of their toe.
You don't even address the fact that everything broken. Just the mental aspect. To me, that's so much of what this boils down to for me. I think we ought to have a facility that represents the pride of having our kids in the worst of the community. Sam said it's unbelievable when they walked in, right? Sam said when they walked in, because this is the thing I was wondering about.
But all the stairwells have cameras now. Last year, I put 42, when as needed, there is a policy, the board adopted a policy. But we put 42 cameras in the school last year, inside and out. And vandalism has gone almost to zero as a result of that. I think that's a direct attribute. The kids know they're going to get caught and there's going to be held accountable. And I don't know as I can say this exactly, but from what I've heard, bullying has possibly also been minimized some with the cameras, or at least when there's complaints of that, we've got a resource to possibly to help with that. But I can't say that for sure. It's just what I've heard.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, it's really, we monitor mostly the cameras if it's something that is violence or drugs related. And the rest, we really don't try to monitor the cameras, you know, on a daily basis. That's not something that we want to do.
The exterior vandalism, you know, was for a number of years a pretty constant issue. You know, driving vehicles onto the soccer fields and the football fields and doing donuts and other things, graffiti. Now with the exterior cameras, we've got eyes all the way around the building. We've had very few incidences of that this year, so I think that's been a big boost to this building security. So, yeah, I'm done, I guess. I don't know, it looks like we lost part of our group here.
They're all in the cap.
Oh, they're in the cap already? Okay.
It's all right with me.
Is that something we can have sent to us before the next meeting to look at?
I don't know
We have some
what
things-
format it's in.
Yeah, we have some things digitally, other things.
I'm gonna try tonight to send a floor plan of the school. It might come in a couple different pieces, but I do have it as a PDF, so you guys get an idea of the classrooms. And you saw tonight how they go through.
Some of that, actually, Mike and I will work on that. I think that we can get some stuff out. I have most of the materials from the committee 3 years ago. I do have digital floor plans. We have some other materials that I'll bring to our next meeting. Some of the renderings, numbers. I think what we were thinking initially was that we weren't going to drill down into the detail of you know, every $10 bill, but I've got some summary numbers for questions like, what would it cost to move the kitchen, you know, that type of thing. So I've been working on getting together some of that type of information. And I can work with you as far as what you think you'd like me to put together for the next meeting. But certainly, I think we can get at least something out to get people started.
For people to look at.
Yeah.
Get some ideas. So, the other thing, we have until August 1st to complete our mission. So basically, that's
Not long.
4 months, 5 months, 4 months.
May, June, and or April, May, June, and July. 4 months, I'd call it at this point.
Yeah. So I don't know how often you all feel we need to meet. If you want to go with also need to be sensitive. Patrick's out to a lot of meetings too, and Jess. So we'd like Patrick to see his family once in a while. And Devin too, he's always here. So do you think,
What do you propose?
do we want to have another meeting if we can? Looking at that calendar, I'd be surprised if we can.
What, next week?
2 weeks. And Wednesdays tend to work well for everybody from the
No.
whole?
No.
No?
No,
Are you messing with me?
no.
Okay.
I told you, originally Wednesday's bad for me.
Oh, okay, all right.
If it's better for everybody else, I'll live with it, but
Okay.
Wednesday's not good for me.
I know Thursdays, and we're bad for 2 of you, and Tuesdays, I think we're bad for somebody else. Mondays and Tuesdays we're bad for
Yeah,
you.
flexible, I can rearrange things.
Would it be helpful to do a doodle poll or something with this group? That puts it together pretty quickly, as long as people log in and do it.
I
So-
think it'd be great to maybe set 2 dates and vote on one 2 weeks from now. Set like a Tuesday, Wednesday maybe, or Tuesday. Set 2 different dates and get at least the majority of the committee here because.
It's a computer thing.
So you people are already at a point where you already have your design and the scope of work that you want to do?
We have what was done with the first committee.
We have we have something that's a great starting point, right? So all the legwork that went behind the design that was drafted before took into account some of the needs, some of the desires, some ideas. I think, personally, what I think some next steps could be are, knowing we have the August 1st deadline, let's sort of plan backwards from there. What do we need to get done? So to be ready for August 1st, what does that look like? And how do we map that back to our next meeting? And really think about what has to get accomplished at each of these meetings. So we really have a plan that gets us to an August 1st accomplishment. And I think one of the pieces we should do is take a look at the design from last time. And rather than maybe start from scratch, based on everything we saw, everything we heard, much of that's accounted for from 3 years ago. The cost may be different because of inflation and whatnot. And there are some things that were a part of that we could have some conversation as to. So I think what we know is it didn't pass last time. We can speculate as to why. Maybe it was because of the sticker shock of $31 or $32 million. I suspect that's probably what most of us think was a big contributing factor. And we could have some conversations around from the last design, which we know didn't pass. What are some things that we think we ought to keep based on what we know and what we saw? What are some things that we think maybe weren't necessary, and get a sense of what might the shift in the price tag be with those changes? And see where that gets us and see if that's something that would be feasible to put forward. I've been working with our business manager or chief financial officer to get a sense of, as we think about a bond, basically how much does money cost these days, right? So we just had the Mountie budget pass, and this Mountie budget has $1 million in the construction line. The reason that's there is because the board was committed to either, hopefully, a bond passes, so because we'll get more for our money by paying interest on a bond than we will by $1 million every year. But we wanted Plan B to be something other than do nothing, or do little, or do what we can when we can. We wanted to have considerably more money to be able to be put into the building on a regular basis if a bond doesn't pass. So all those factors are there, so we've kind of taken a look at what would that $1 million that's already in the budget get us for bond money. So that can give us a point of reference in terms of what might be palatable. The idea being that $1 million that's there, if that were put toward principal and interest, essentially there'd be no tax impact in passing a bond because the money's already there, it's already factored into the taxes. So we have some numbers we can play around with as we try to figure out what's the scope of the work that needs to be done, how much does that cost, and what do we think is a reasonable amount of money to put out before the taxpayers, which is essentially the charge of the committee.
The other thing is that those numbers from 3 years ago, not a huge amount, but some of the things can now be taken off the list because the work we've done in the last couple of years. I mean, I'm not talking several $1 million, but obviously there will be some changes in that.
And we have $1 million in next year's budget to do some work. So as we think about what might get done sooner, that might take some other things off the list potentially, or maybe some things don't need to get put on the list that might otherwise.
And bear in mind, tonight we only looked inside the building, but there's outbuildings, there's athletic facilities, there's more to this campus than just the interior work, and that was all considered in the previous plan to a certain extent, not a huge amount, but there were proposals for upgrades to the track and the football field and the press box and that type of thing.
So I think just going back to the working backwards part, I think Troy and I had this conversation back in August or something at a soccer scrimmage, was, keep asking ourselves, what's the purpose of this bond? And then it's, how is this going to benefit students? How is it going to benefit staff members? And how is it going to benefit community members? And then pooling those resources directly into those areas that it's going to directly get us an increase into those, into those categories, into the students and staff and community. How are we going to make it better for them? And then I think the second big thing is the, target cost. I think that, like Patrick mentioned, it's that $30+ million scared a lot of people away. So, trying to figure out a target number sooner than later. And I think just between those two things, why are we sitting here right now and how much are we looking to spend those are my two biggest questions.
My sense is that, something I would like to find out more about would be what was done 3 years ago as far as, building, working with the constituents, working with the taxpayers, and do we think in, hindsight is always 20/20, but do we think in retrospect that enough was done to bring more people into the conversation so that, I think, I kind of agree, I think the sticker shock was what killed the bond issue, but if it was, I don't know what steps were taken to make people not be surprised that it was going to be $31 million or whatever it was. And if there's something that we can help do in that regard, that might be something very important.
Definitely.
Maybe Troy, if you could remember to tell us some of the things, we were both on that together. I mean, we had a website, we had a Facebook
so
community,
communication is the, it's not lack of putting information out sometimes, it's lack of A, do people want to access it or even hear it? And B, did they hear something else that may or may not have been true, actual fact that was shaping their decision?
Some of that, if I remember correctly.
There was from my perspective, there was a huge amount of that. They were originally went to every select board. There were meetings in every town. There were articles in the paper. There was a website that was put up. There were mailings. What I just handed around was one of the
weekly tours of the building. There were forums here where we invited the community like 8 times. So I would say we can do what we did again. But you can't do more communication than we did. You might try and do it differently. I think there were some things that were scaring people. There was people talking about the wood shop disappearing. That scared, you just lost a whole bunch of voters. There was issues with good, bad, indifferent what was happening at the superintendent level that was keeping things at bay. there was the actual number, which did escalate at the end, probably a little bit more than we anticipated. But you know, none of these numbers can really be hard and fast until you get in there, and you don't know if you're even going to spend that amount of money, you know, once they open things up. So I think there was a host of things that happened, but I would say we did everything we could possibly think of to try and get out the communication. It doesn't mean we did as well as we could, I don't know, but we offered forum after forum after forum. And you got people, but you gotta have the same people over and over again, you know? But I think that actual number, like figuring out what the magic number is, but I think you gotta be careful because the magic number might not get you anything you want.
Right.
You know, so I think we have two sides of that coin is what do we really want to do? What does that cost? Okay, maybe we can't do everything we want to do. What do we have to peel off the list to get to the happy medium?
Historically, back when we were going through this process, at one point, we had 3 different plans, if you will, the small, medium, and large, okay? And those obviously had varying price tags. You know, the do-nothing plan wasn't really a do-nothing plan, that's what we called it, but just the compliance numbers are over $3 million. Ultimately, that committee agreed to go with the Cadillac plan, the major plan that encompassed everything that we heard. And that's where our instructions at that point to the architect to give us that concept based on trying to do, not 100%, but in the upper 90% of everything that had been proposed. What I handed around was just a summary sheet from the architect of where we ended up and how we got over 30 million. And one thing you'll notice there that the actual nuts and bolts, if you will, of that proposal was ended up around 26 million. And then it's customary to add healthy contingencies to projects, so that was an add. And then also, there's a fair amount of work that is not included by the architect or by the contractor and typically is paid for by the school itself. A good example of that is the asbestos, and there's some legal reasons for that as to who has to manage that. You know, my name is on EPA documents for asbestos. But those costs, when you look at the bottom of the sheet where it says estimated owner incidental costs are actually fairly significant, and those had to be added to that bottom line. So the bond, when it went out, was over 32 million was the total number.
And I think perhaps the most significant advantage this time over last time is the budget that just passed. You know, as we've looked at some possible scenarios, using a 30-year bond, and we could decide whether 30 years is too long or if we want something shorter, and using 3.5%, which is more or less what we could expect on a bond note. The money that's in the budget now, that $1 million in the construction line, over that 30 years at 3.5%, buys you $20 million of bond money. So a $20 million bond, we could argue, has no tax impact. So from a selling point, that's advantageous. I don't know what $20 million is going to get us in terms of the scope of the work we're talking about, but I dare say that's maybe around $20 million ahead of where we started last time. So that's a pretty good jump.
So back to our question of when's our next meeting? How, I mean, I know we need to work into it, but we need to get this done and get people at it.
Yeah, we can, if you want to just send me an email requesting to arrange the doodle poll, what we'll need is email addresses, which I suspect we have for everybody here. I think that's how we've been communicating to get this meeting out, right? So how a doodle poll works is you'll get a link via your email. Click on the link, it'll bring you to a site. You just type in your name. There'll be a host of possible meeting dates and times, and you just click on the ones that work for you. And then when everybody's had a chance to do that, it tells us in the end who can do what meetings, and we use that information to decide meeting dates.
So our next meeting, what will we be focusing on? Do you know at this point?
No, I mean there's some of the work. So the question is, I think, what information do we need to really set out a plan? I think that's a good first step tonight. Kind of gave everybody an overview of the scope, of the potential scope of the need, just seeing it with your own eyes. But I think a potential next step, and this is something that Chris is certainly going to be very involved in as the chair, is really getting a sense of what do we need to be able to make some decisions, and what kind of decisions do we want. One piece is this committee could say, we want to start all over again. We want to do all of the collection of information from faculty and staff and community. We want to do another needs assessment, feasibility study. We want to choose vet a whole bunch of different architects again, do everything. In which case, I'm concerned because I think our timeline wouldn't allow for that.
How long did it take last time to do the collection?
I would suggest, you guys know what you want. You know what you need, right? Just list them all down and maybe we can prioritize certain
What we
needs.
have, yeah.
See, I think that's, to me,
work
that,
from there.
what I think is a great starting place is let's look at what was done last time. What was the last plan? And talk, and have that as a basis for conversation about what, from that plan, what do we think needs to stay? What's really essential? And what do we think maybe doesn't need to? We know the scope of that is probably beyond what we might be able to get past. Because if it was 31 or 32 million 3 or 4 years ago, it's probably going to be more than that now. So the sticker shock factor is going to be potentially even greater. So for whatever that was in terms of a determining factor, that's still there. So then to have the conversation about, well, do we need to move, for example, does the library need to move from the back of the building to the front of the building? What was that cost? If we didn't do that, how much would that drop the sticker price? If we didn't do this, how much would it drop the sticker price? If we change this idea? Just to
make a list and prioritize it.
And then we're still going to need to go to an architect, right? So to start with the drawings, and it makes some sense to perhaps stick with the same architect. Depending on the scope, we may have to bid it, but they already have all of our drawings electronically, so to be able to make the changes would be a lot easier than going with a different firm who's probably going to have to start all over again. But to say, so maybe we don't want a gym, what's that say? Maybe we want a bigger gym, what would the increase be? So to start from where we left off, let it grow or let it shrink as we think it needs to be, and maybe we can get some input specifically on those things to say, so what if we didn't have a gym? What do people think of that? What if we didn't move the library? What do people think of that? And then make decisions.
When you're talking about the plan, are you just talking about the drawings, or is there a narrative as well?
I have to look to Alden on that. I don't know. I know there are drawings.
When you were talking about the plan, are those just pictures, or is there a narrative?
No, there's oodles and oodles.
Yeah, I have several packets. I'm sure Troy probably does too. There were slide presentations that were done. Unfortunately, the one thing you do have to remember is that all of that information belongs to the architect, all right, legally. So it's proprietary, and at some point we're going to have to engage them if we want, to get all
The school
of that.
doesn't have a license for that? I would think the school would be licensed.
Well, we bought a certain amount of stuff from
We bought a certain amount of stuff, but under the contract, I don't have, a lot of stuff was hand carried in the public presentations and so forth, but yeah, we have a fair amount of info we can put out.
If we're gonna, as you propose, as you were thinking and we're talking about potentially basing our work off of the work that was previously done, can there be a presentation of that, what was previously done, in a way that boils down packets and packets and reams of written information and stuff down to like the key points, and these were the key things that were addressed, and these were the key cost drivers? Because it feels to me like we're going to maybe take a look at that and subtract from it, from 32 down to 20, and it would be good to know what's in there, and add some things that weren't adequately addressed, the tech ed stuff that may not have adequately been addressed. We may want to add some things to it, but if that's going to be a starting point, it will be helpful for us to get up to speed relatively quickly on what that is. And I mean, giving me a web link and asking me to read 37 pages and 42 hyperlinks, I'll get some of it, but I won't get it all.
One thing you can do is, some of our public meetings towards the end were taped. And I actually went on yesterday onto, I believe the website is Mount Abe Bond Project on the Weebly. And the video, Troy did a very nice presentation. that whole video is over 2.5 hours long, but there is some of that stuff that's still out there on the website, and we can give you links to get you there.
I'd like to start with an executive summary, not the 2.5 hours as a starting point, if such a thing exists.
So Troy, you were on the previous committee, Alden, you were certainly involved. Anybody else here involved in that last time? Chris Nezen was, and you were too?
Dustin was.
So I'm wondering how many folks from the committee before could just sort of meet and prepare something just to kind of give that overview. If we needed, we could engage the architect, I'm sure, for a fee to come and talk about it as well.
I mean, I'll read the stuff eventually, but I think it'll be good to start with sort of a,
But to see the drawings and have someone kind of talk you through what's on the drawings and why they're there.
Yeah, what were we thinking? What was the group thinking? How did it come to be the way it is? I'm sure you've told the story 100 times, so I'm sorry to ask you to tell it again.
Is that Rev up Mount Abe site? I'll have to go and look. I think it is. Because most of the info was there. I mean, I haven't kept a lot of it. Was.
I think I've still got even some of the big cardboard.
I've got some too.
With the good drawings.
Just induced a bad dream, I can see.
Yeah. Sorry. I still got in my barn all the things to stick in the yard, thinking we could just put over the date and use it again.
But I guess maybe a first step is to see, does this committee feel like starting from where they left off last time is the way to go?
Can I just, I don't want to, dominate the conversation here, but what I saw tonight, throughout the years, especially with the gymnastics, I mean, not gymnastics, but the sports part of it, things are put here, 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 here. Locker rooms are shot. I mean, that's a given. They're pricey. Has any consideration been in building a rec facility separate? And that would free up so much room in this building to move the shops together, perhaps put the office right in the entrance where the existing gym is now. So you walk in, there's the office, glass. I know it's a lot of work and I get it, but it's hard to move things around in the same footprint. Because your shop, you got a shop upstairs, you got one downstairs, you got the arts and the pottery, which to me is kind of, should all be centralized. Has that been discussed as far as building a separate, just gym, 2 gyms, big building, I get it, it's expensive. But has that been considered as far as, big steel building, and that would just free up so much room in this building to be able to configure things properly.
I don't know that idea specifically has come up, but I think one thing that we recognize is there isn't, aside from from an additional gym, because we do run into space needs there, there isn't necessarily a need for more classroom space. To better utilize the space that's within the footprint, for sure there's a need, but enrollment isn't growing by any means. And we, in fact, have 350 fewer students than we had a few years ago within the same footprint. In fact, this footprint may be even larger with the addition that went on 15, 20 years ago. I don't know how long that was, a little while back. So I don't think there's a need for more space. I think it's mostly about upgrading what we have and better utilizing that space and figuring something out for that second gym. Because of the conflicts there and the scheduling issues that come about from that.
Well, also keep in mind, it's not just our sports, it's community. I mean, we have things in the CAF and all the time.
Right.
Saturdays, if we open Sundays, they'd be in here Sundays. Sunday's like the holy day that we still do stuff, but it's few far and in between after men's league basketball gets over. But this place is booked nonstop, and it's not just the school. It's Girl Scouts, it's Boy Scouts. I mean, the Boy Scouts are in the pool tonight. It's community members, it's wrestlers that have a banquet dinner. This weekend there was youth wrestling, so they set up the cafeterias like a little luncheon area. They come in and buy lunch and they'd sit. I mean, it's not just Mount Abe, it's not just Bristol, it's community. It's,
and I think to echo your point a little bit, I understand what you're saying, because there was the conversation last time about at what point do you just start over? Because the cost, the conversation, and I don't work in building or construction at all, so it's out of, my realm, but they kept talking about renovating stuff is by square foot more expensive apparently than new build. And they kept kind of getting to that point, like at what point do we just say, boom, because they do that. They go down to Newburyport, Mass, and they just build the new school, and then they tear down the old one, and it becomes fields, but we didn't have that kind of money to get to that number. But there is some validity if you're thinking about, if you get to the point where the community supports and the administration and this group supports a second gym, that is an add-on. And you could feasibly say, if we're gonna add on this, we could add on the, all the custodial space can move into that back corner and have overhead doors, and then you can bring down your, like there's things you can do by having a little bit of an add-on and a little bit of bump on with that, where you can reconfigure your locker rooms in this hallway. And so those conversations were had about what does a small add-on get you, even though you're not adding classroom space, you're adding some space, because we saw lack of storage space. You have no storage space, so there's things you can add on and then reconfigure with some freed up space.
Well, yeah, like the shop in the front here, is an issue. It's in the front, the door's here, it's right in the front. Where are you gonna put it?
Think about,
You're not gonna put it,
metal shop to come downstairs, that's a tough one.
where are you gonna put that?
So
They should be focused more on this end of the building for entrances and things like that.
I'd like to echo what Dan Nugent just said. I understand we don't need more classrooms, but we walked through one classroom to get to another one. I think we're talking about reconfiguring what we've got to better utilize the space that we now have. And, I would like not to be hamstrung by the past committee. I know there was an awful lot of work that went into it, but I think there might be some fresh ideas, and I would hate to have to use a plan just to fit this August 1st deadline. I'd like to come up with something real nice and real, that's palatable to the voters. And I know we can do it. There's no question that we can do it. I'd just like to be open to some other things too. And I think Dan has a good idea. I think a new gym built properly with maybe 2 gym spaces in it, locker rooms and all of that would be a real good idea to think about.
I would just add that I've had conversations with both Mike and Jess about this, but we also really need to remember that this isn't our school, and our school starts where we come in the driveway, and Mount Abe is a ton of acreage compared to other high schools. We are the luckiest I'm the luckiest AD in the fall with the soccer fields that we have and the number of teams we have. I'm telling you, people are like, what? You have 4 soccer fields? I'm like, oh yeah, I got 4 soccer fields. But with that being said, we have a ton of room on this campus, and I think we need to, I've Google mapped this 100 times and just looked at it from the top down, and we have a lot of space to do a lot of things, so we just gotta be creative with it.
With that being said, there isn't a lot of, you can't add on to the building. There's no place on the actual building.
There's 7
to that. You have all that room, but yet.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
You can't do anything.
If you really look,
We're not going west.
there's a lot of room.
So it's kind of a interesting thing, new architecture. And with that being said about renovation costing so much versus new, food for thought.
Just so you know, that question was one of the first questions we put to Dora Whittier, what it would cost to just build a new school. And at that time, the answer they gave us was $68.8 million.
To build what we have.
To build what we have here. Okay.
Right, but I'm not talking about a new school.
No, I understood, but just as a reference point, we did, right out of the box, we said, well, what if we just build a whole new complex and then bulldoze this? Right?
I don't think that's necessary, because like you said, the bones are great, the building's in good shape. So that would be going too far.
All on the same page here. We want to go forward. I think it's a good idea to at least look at what we already have, take our ideas of between what we know was proposed, we know it didn't work, we know we can't go that route, it didn't float 3 years ago, it's not going to float again. and what the needs are that we saw from Mike and Alden tonight. And the new gym is definitely a need. So let's we need a new next meeting date, and I need to get y'all home. So, because otherwise your family's not gonna let you come to another meeting after. So, do we want to ask the members of the past committee to prepare a summary for the next meeting? Do you guys want to let us know when you feel you'd be able to do that? Or do you want to set a next meeting, look at the stuff, and go from there?
For me, I honestly don't still have that information.
I mean, I got a bunch of
that's
stuff.
it,
We
you're
could,
fired.
we could sit down.
It was 3
I
years
think
ago.
schedule the next meeting for the whole group.
Okay.
And then we'll get some iteration of.
I'd be happy to sort of spearhead that. As I say, I have a lot of stuff at my office,
Okay.
and to be honest, I'm the only person that's really getting paid to do that, so, you know, I think I can reach out to Troy and a few of the others and put together a fair amount of info.
Would you have like a slideshow that we can?
If I can get that from the architect, like I say, we didn't end up with those materials, but I'll see what I can do.
So.
At the very least, we have big, colorful, like,
Right.
poster
Yeah, I do have
size
a bunch of
drawings.
posters, a bunch of renderings, that type of stuff.
Plenty of visual aids.
I think it's plenty to get started.
To understand the preparation that took 18 months. We got this information, we talked to these people, we got these studies, we got this data.
Right.
Not to be constrained by it,
Sure.
but to understand. To understand, I mean, I'll read the book, but I'd like to start with like an executive
I
summary.
can go,
of what-
absolutely, I can go through the
what
minutes
was-
and kind of do a timeline of this is what we did in the first 3 months
Got
and
a
the
lot
next
of
3
it right
months.
here,
and-
you know, it's-
Again, I don't want to be constrained by it, but it would be good to, I mean, we paid for that.
Troy, do you remember if
People
you
put a lot of
solved
time and energy into it, we should
you solved
understand
all
what
those
was in.
problems going through one classroom to get to another one?
A lot of them. That was, if you look at the drawings, they changed, yes.
The drawing is not the current, I didn't want to confuse anybody, the drawing I passed around is not the current floor plan, that was the proposal.
Yeah.
That
And
was-
it did address the cutting through classrooms, because
Pretty
that was,
much,
there were some big giant things that were on the table. The
So-
pool was not going away, and natural light, and ventilation, and classrooms inside of classrooms. Those were some big ones.
So, two gentlemen that can't meet on Thursdays, Wednesdays are out, Mondays and Tuesdays are tough for you, but you can
I'll
get
just reschedule.
with what's here, we're looking at Tuesday, April 4th. Would that work for everyone? And we'll skip the whole survey thing. Everybody says that'll work. Does that work?
Tuesdays are good for me.
Tuesdays are good?
Tuesdays are better for me.
It doesn't
Okay.
matter.
Wednesdays, I
Sure, the other thing I would
6
add
o'clock, yeah.
is, and again, we had chatted about this, but if there was any sort of like vision or mission statement from the
Patrick?
previous one, because I think
Tuesday,
there
April
was.
4th?
Okay, because I'd love to just see like what that goal, vision,
That work? That work? 6 o'clock?
driving, pinpoint.
What day
was.
From the board?
We've gone around the bend, we're cutting
From
to
the
the chase.
Reno committee, committee itself.
Yes, okay, Tuesday, April 4th, 6 o'clock, small cafeteria.
I'd just like, does the school have any current bonds that are still being paid on?
No, it's like,
We should bring dinner to chip leader meeting.
I think so in June.
I think that's a very important thing for the public to know,
Yep,
and I don't think they do that.
right,
I know that.
yep.
And I think the dollar amount is way more than people will accept. When we did the addition on the south of the building, they started out with 12 million, then went to 8, and we settled for 3. And that's how we got that addition on the other end of the building.
If they stayed with the 11, we'd have a second gym.
So, all right, there's no more public
It was on the
here,
original plan, yeah.
so there's no public comment. And do I have to, can I just say adjourn, or do I have to do the whole,
Probably ought to
make a motion
move to
thing?
adjourn.
I'll make a motion.
I made a motion.
All right, motion
It'll be
second.
quick.
So Devin? All right, we are,
All those in favor?
all those in favor? Aye, we are adjourned at 9:25. Thank you very much, everyone.
Alden, thank you.
Yes.
Great tour
Mike,
and
thank you.
good upkeep of what happened.